Good morning. Good morning. It's Tuesday. It's February 20th. And today, both Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt are being sentenced in a courtroom in Utah. That court does not allow streaming out of court, which is always so annoying. So we have waited to get the news feeds after court ended. So some of you might have seen that they were already sentenced, but that might still be a bit confusing, and we're going to talk about it. Both Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke made statements. Ruby's more thorough than Jodi Hildebrandt. The judge had statements to make. The prosecutor does talk about the abuse suffered by the children of Ruby Franke at the hands of Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. It does not go into detail, but this is your warning that there are discussions and descriptions of child abuse because they are both being sentenced for 4 counts of child abuse. So chat, buckle up. Today, we are kind of at the end of the 8 passengers, Ruby Franke, Jodi Hildebrandt case. This is not going to be appealed. This was a negotiated plea. So we are just going to see the judge impose sentence, what the judge has to say, what the attorneys have to say, what these 2 defendants have to say, and then we can close the prison door on both of these women and move on. So this is the end for these 2 women. Off to prison they go. So let's get right into it. Thanks, Law Nerds. Let me know where you're coming in from. Yes, I still have coffee this morning.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the Law Nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
All right, we are going to get right into these court hearings. Each sentencing took 15 plus minutes. So we're going to go through each one. Now we will break them down. Replay crew, you know I love you. These will all be time-stamped down below. And because, court has already happened, some of you might have seen the sentencing already. I'm sure none of you understand what happened in this courtroom today, and that's okay. So let us go into court in Utah and go through this sentencing. Yes, I have found that the court in Utah is recorded helpfully via Potato. So for all of you that are like, that sound is terrible, you are not wrong. The sound is terrible. We will do our best. And this is how court rolls. I'm optimistic that we will have better audio for trial in Santa Fe, New Mexico later this week. So Jodi Hildebrandt, or Ruby Franke's sentencing is first, and then Jodi Hildebrandt. For those of you that don't know much about this case, it's really going to be laid out by the prosecutor. Remember, this is a negotiated plea deal for both of these defendants. They've already agreed what is going to happen. This is just the imposition of sentencing.
For sentencing in the matter of state of Utah.
This is on mono
Ruby
audio.
Franke. Ms. Franke is here with Mr. Windward, Mr. Clark, and Mr. Sham are here for the state of Utah. And we are ready to proceed with sentencing.
You're killing me with this audio. This is the KUTV feed. If this audio stays out, I'm going to go to a different feed. Yeah, there's no audio. Okay, KUTV. We gave you a second. No audio. No audio at all coming out of the KUTV feed. I can't believe they uploaded this entire video with no audio. And there are, let me refresh it and try one more time, but that audio cuts right out. Let's see if there's any comments about it. Nope. Oh, there we go. Now we have audio.
Restitution.
Goodness. The tech is never helpful. And at some point, we're just going to have to go plug in to the trucks and get our own feeds. That's just the option.
Agreed to as part of the plea agreement, correct? That is correct. There is a pre-sentence investigation report in the matter.
Here, I'm going to back up just so you hear them talk about the fact that this is a negotiated plea. We're going to bump this up. Being a streamer is always so exciting.
And we are ready to proceed with sentencing.
This is mono.
The term terms of the sentence were agreed to as part of the plea agreement, correct?
That is correct.
There is a pre-sentence investigation report in the matter. I have reviewed that. Everyone has seen it.
Yes.
What about restitution, counsel, before we move on with other matters?
We'd like to leave that open at this time, Your Honor. I can get into that. I might be more comfortable if we approach to get into that.
Is there an agreement that restitution, that we reserve that, and for what period of time?
8 months is what we're anticipating. But I haven't talked to the defendant's counsel about that.
We haven't discussed that, Your Honor.
Is there any objection?
No.
All right.
This video does not have closed captions, y'all.
What's the state's position regarding
there they
sentencing?
are. They weren't there before. Perfect. Withdrawn.
Your Honor, the state...
They are talking about restitution. What they just said is that they are going to leave restitution open for 8 months. This is because the amount of restitution has not been determined yet. The amount of medical care for the children now and going forward in the future, not just for physical medical care, but for mental health care. So restitution is staying open for 8 months so that number can be determined, and it might come back on a restitution hearing. Ruby Franke wouldn't need to be in court for that. The lawyers can do that.
I'll stand up. The state respectfully requests that the court sentence Ms. Franke to consecutive
This is the
prison
prosecutor
terms for each of the
sentence
4 counts of aggravated child abuse.
Statement.
This sentence was agreed to by Ms. Franke in her plea agreement and is also recommended by Idaho Probation and Parole.
I'm guessing it's raining because the prosecutor's jacket is actually wet. This feels like a jury instruction. Like if you see somebody come in and their jacket is wet, you can assume it's raining. That's a whole aside. The prosecutor is going to give a statement about the harm done to the children, just so you are aware.
She committed horrible acts of child abuse. From May to August in 2023, Ms. Franke and her business partner held her 2 children, ages 9 and 11, turning 12, in a concentration camp-like setting. The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were isolated from others and were hidden when people came to visit the house where the children and the defendants were staying. The children were forced to do physical tasks like carrying loaded boxes up and down stairs and wall sits or sitting against a wall without a chair or a stool for hours at a time. They were also forced to do manual labor outdoors in the extreme summer heat, at times without shoes or socks. They were forced to stand outside on a cement patio in the summer heat for hours and even days at a time. They were beaten, and the 12-year-old was regularly bound hand and foot after he attempted to run away in mid-July. Both children had extensive physical injuries from the abuse that required hospitalization when they were found. The injuries from the binding to the 12-year-old are particularly awful. In addition to physical abuse, the children were emotionally abused to the extent that each believed, to some degree, that they deserved what was being done to them.
Which is fucking appalling.
Had the older of the children not had the courage to run away and ask a neighbor to call the police, heaven only knows how much longer he could have survived in that situation. After being caught, Ms. Franke has shown considerable remorse.
I'm just going to pause real quick as the prosecutor is making their sentencing statement to the court, because what the prosecutor just said is not to be taken lightly. The prosecutor said, had the older child victim, by older child, we're talking 12, almost 12 when this was happening. What he said was, with the older child victim, had he not escaped when he did, because he attempted to escape before, when he escaped when he did, had he not, the prosecutor's statement to the court that has to have a basis is, it is unclear how much longer that child would have survived. That tells you how bad this was, that these children were in imminent danger of death. And that is something that we have seen in some of the filings, but for the prosecutor to make that statement in open court during sentencing is an incredibly big statement, because it has to have basis in fact. This isn't This isn't something that can be speculated about. This is something that has to be a grounded statement. And this prosecutor is not sensationalizing it. He is really downplaying the harm to these children. The court knows what it is. The court has seen the pre-sentencing report, but that is something that was speculated about in this case. But now we have what the prosecutor is saying here is, had that child not escaped, we have no idea how much longer this child could have survived. And that is absolutely horrific, which is where I think most of you in the chat are going to come away with prison time equals all. Like just all.
As evidenced by agreeing to serve consecutive prison terms and being willing to cooperate with the state against Ms. Hildebrandt.
Consecutive means one after the other.
However, given the severity of the abuse she inflicted, consecutive terms are appropriate in this case.
After the others.
As the court's aware, Section 76-3401 lays out factors the court takes into account in determining whether consecutive or concurrent sentences should be imposed. Those factors are the gravity and circumstances of the offense, the number of victims, and the history, character, and rehabilitative needs of the defendant. As agreed to in the plea agreement and as recommended by adult probation and parole, consecutive sentences are appropriate. This is due to the severity of the abuse.
The prosecutor is just making another record for consecutive sentencing. Consecutive sentencing was agreed upon in the plea agreement. This is meaning that you serve your sentence for count 1, and then your sentence for count 2, and then your sentence for, it's not count 3, it's count 5, I think, and then count 6. They go after each other. So whatever she serves on count 1, she will then have to serve the others. They will go after each other, not all at the same time concurrent. And consecutive is a big deal.
To both victims.
Good to see you in the chat, Nick.
It could be argued that Ms. Franke should receive a lesser sentence than Ms. Hildebrandt because of her remorse and willingness to cooperate with...
Sir, she's their mother. I'm sorry. Y'all, I know you're here for the commentary. She's their mother. She's their mother. She is their mother. So no, there is no argument that Ruby Franke should get a lesser sentence than Jodi Hildebrandt. All.
The state. However, the Board of Pardons and Parole will have broad latitude and will be able to take those facts into account when it determines how long each of the co-defendants will remain incarcerated. In conclusion, we respectfully request...
I'm going to back this up. This is important information. Utah imposes indeterminate sentencing. So when the judge sentences this defendant, it is not a, you're getting X number of years. I'm just, spoiler alert. This is an indeterminate sentence. She will be sentenced to a range of years. And the Board of Prisons and Parole will determine how much time she should get. That's what the prosecutor is talking about now. The prosecutor is talking about the factors that will be considered by the Board of Probation and Parole. It's strange to me. Not all jurisdictions are like this. Utah does indeterminate sentence. So listen to what the prosecutor's saying, because this informs what we need to know about what the judge will sentence her to. So yes, it will be a range for every charge.
Because of her remorse and willingness to cooperate with the state. However, the Board of Pardons and Parole will have broad latitude and will be able to take those facts into account when it determines how long each of the co-defendants will remain incarcerated. In conclusion, we respectfully request that the court go along with what was agreed to in the plea agreement and is recommended by adult probation and parole and impose consecutive sentences.
So impose consecutive sentences.
No, Your Honor.
Probation and parole will take, they said probation and parole will take into account Ruby Franke's cooperation with the prosecution.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. In my few comments this morning, and the comments my client wishes to make in a few minutes, we are not suggesting, nor are we asking that the court deviate from the stipulated sentence contained in the written plea agreement. I want the court to know that through introspection and reflection, Ruby Franke has become a serious student of her own actions. In the very early days of my involvement with Ruby, she was somewhat defensive, and she was still very much indoctrinated into a philosophy that was destructive. Fortunately,
here comes the blame Jodi Hildebrandt. Y'all just, I have feelings about it. I know y'all have feelings about it. We're just going to listen. We're just going to listen and see what happens.
Ruby came to the stark realization of the errors in her thinking patterns and subsequent actions. To say that she was horrified by this realization would be to put it mildly.
Her defense attorney just stood up in court and said she was horrified to discover that she had been physically abusing her own children.
I have marveled at how quickly Ruby abandoned her defensive stance and moved toward her total acceptance of her actions and to her sentence today. So far, she has used her time in jail to unwrap the layers upon layers of deceit and deception foisted upon her over the last 4 years by an unscrupulous individual. Ruby realizes that she still has work to do in shedding those thinking errors and to reestablish a better and correct pattern of thinking and behavior. Ruby realizes that changing her thinking, reestablishing relationships, and healing are not simple or easy tasks. However, she is committed.
You know who healing is not simple for? Her children.
Committed to doing that work. I would like the court to know that Ruby Franke is a delightful, respectful, and responsible person. She is open to feedback and addressing the consequences of her actions head on, and now ready to address your honor and accept your judgment. Thank you.
Being willing to accept responsibility will factor in to the Prison and Parole Board's determination of how much time she's going to get. And we'll talk about that after these sentencings. That's why they are illuminating it. Because this, what they're doing in court, will factor into how much time she will spend. So, you guys in the chat, everyone who's saying, sure, Jan, know that I'm on that bus with you. I'm with you. We're going to hear what Ruby has to say. She's going to cry. Just take a deep breath. This is the stuff that happens in court, and we're going to watch it together. And your feelings are valid.
Judge Walton.
Thank you. Ms. Franke has a statement she'd like to make.
She does.
Oh, lawyer, don't stand in front of her. We want to see her.
Judge Walton.
You don't have to bend down.
Okay. Thank you.
Lawyer, sit.
I would like to make a statement without any...
We would like to see your client's face. Lawyer, sit.
...intent to change my stipulated sentence. For the past 4 years, I've chosen to follow counsel and guidance that has led me into a dark delusion. My distorted version of reality went largely...
You guys, she is going to explain what she believes happened here and blame Jodi Hildebrandt. Just breathe. Just breathe.
...unchecked as I would isolate from anyone who challenged me. I was led to believe that this world was an evil place, filled with cops who control, hospitals that injure, government agencies that brainwash, church leaders who lie and lust, husbands who refuse to protect, and children who need abused. My choice to believe and behave this paranoia culminated into criminal activity for which I stand before you today ready to take accountability. Jodi Hildebrandt was never my business partner, nor was I ever employed by her. I have never received wages from...
Really? Really? She wasn't your business partner? Really? Really? I have questions.
...her or connections. Jodi was employed as my son's counselor in 2019, and in 2020 I paid her to be my mentor. It is important to me to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame. I take full accountability for my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence. Thank you to the officers.
Ma'am, it is not your preference that you serve a prison sentence. It is what you agreed to. But I think she is trying to say the right words to show that she has remorse. She may genuinely have remorse. However, I am preferring a prison sentence. You've agreed to a prison sentence. Your PSR is a prison sentence. The minimum you're going to get is 4 years. That is how that works. Okay. We're going to keep going.
In Santa Clara and the Ivan City Police. Nick Hellman.
She's now thanking people like it's an acceptance speech. She's thanking that we're going to back up and let her thank people. We're going to let her thank the Academy, y'all. We're going to do it. Okay. Your preference is prison. Go ahead and thank all the people.
Me, to demonstrate my remorse and regret without blame. I take full accountability.
You literally just blamed Jodi Hildebrandt, but go off.
For my choices, and it is my preference that I serve a prison sentence. Thank you to the officers in Santa Clara and the Ivan City Police. Nick Hellman, Brian Polifo, Cy Pikuvit, Mike Pondoyo in Tobler, John Ward, D. Lewis, and Chief Flowers. You were the angels who came and saved my children. I especially want to thank Detective J. Bate. She plucked me out of a situation I didn't know how to get out of. And the moment she handcuffed me was...
It's hard. Ruby Franke is saying she got me out of a situation I didn't know how to get out of, as if she was the one being abused and did not have authority or autonomy over her own life decision and choices, and that somehow law enforcement saved her when her child escaped and ran for help because he was being abused. She is leaning into, this woman had so much control over me, I could not leave. There are complex dynamics in abusive relationships. The relationship between her and Jodi Hildebrandt might have had coercive control, might have had abuse. However, her children are the victims here. And so it is very difficult to listen to her saying that somebody needed to save her from that situation. So we're going to continue on.
The moment I gained my freedom. You were not.
The moment I was handcuffed, she said, is the moment I gained my freedom. That's what she just said. How long did she work on writing this?
I especially want to thank Detective J. Bate. She plucked me out of a situation I didn't know how to get out of. And the moment she handcuffed me was the moment I gained my freedom. You were not the controlling ones. I was. Thank you to the medical staff at Intermountain Hospital. Your skill, tenderness, and professionalism helped heal my children. Jodi
healed your children from what you did.
And I inflicted the injuries.
Oh.
Not the hospital.
Jodi and I inflicted the injuries, not the hospital. Ma'am, no one assumed the hospital inflicted the injuries on your children. No one believed that. But at least you admitted it. So,
Mountain Hospital, your skill, tenderness, and professionalism helped heal my children. Jodi and I inflicted the injuries, not the hospital. Thank you to DCFS, the Children's Justice Center.
It's very hard for me to listen to you thank DCFS, knowing that your older child called DCFS at least multiple times to indicate how dangerous your household was, and nothing was done until your child escaped in horrific condition. Okay.
Judge Basil and other key adults, you've gathered my children under your wing and offered them love, compassion, encouragement. You were not the ones who were doing the brainwashing. Thank you to my Bishop Tom Hawks and my state president, Jim Nelson.
She's thanking the church.
For reminding me of the Lord's love for the lost. Okay. So much pain and suffering would have been avoided had I followed and heeded your counsel. I was the one who was deceived, not you. Thank you to the Washington County Prosecutor's Office, Ryan Sham, the legal assistants and discovery clerks, Eric Clark.
I will say, it is very rare that I have seen someone being sentenced to prison thank the entirety of the staff at the district attorney's office. That's new. That's new.
You exemplified to me how justice and mercy are meant to coexist. My charges are just, They offer safety to my family.
I'm glad you
accountability to the public. Okay. And they did show mercy to me. Thank you to my attorney, Lamar Winward, and his staff. I would not be where I am today without them. Thank you to Randy Kester for your limitless energy in healing my family. My dear friends, Pam and Roy, I'm so sorry for letting you down. Because of your association with me, your innocence was called into question. My mother-in-law, father-in-law, Kevin's family, my cousins, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and neighbors, you all saw the warning signs long before I did, and you did what you could.
And then what happened? And then you moved in with Jodi Hildebrandt.
You wanted to help, but I pushed you away. My mother and father, I have been utterly wretched to you. You have offered me unconditional love, and for that I have offered you unconditional contempt. My siblings.
Unconditional contempt is interesting. It's, I imagine we'll get to the children, like she's working backwards. She's gone from the hospital, the police, and DCFS to her family members, who it sounds like she cut off when they questioned her child abuse. And we will get to her talking about her children. We're all just gonna take a deep breath together here for a minute as she gets into talking about cutting off her family. But it seems that she wants the court to know how many people that she has hurt. And that is something. I mean, that is something. It doesn't land well, but it's something.
And their spouses, because of my decision to roll around in a pigsty, I've drugged your family.
I can't with this analogy. Because we're talking about your children.
Wretched to you. You have offered me unconditional love, and for that I have offered you unconditional contempt. My siblings and their spouses, because of my decision to roll around in a pigsty, I've dragged your families through the mud in public. Yet, when I desired to return as the prodigal sister, unlike the prodigal's brother in the Bible, you synced step with my parents and ran out to greet me. Your capacity to love is unprecedented. Kevin.
She's praising her siblings, and now we're about to get on to Kevin, her estranged husband, because he's filed for divorce. The thing that's difficult for me in all of this is that it feels to me, these are my initial gut reaction feelings, because I'm not feeling a ton of emotion from her. It feels to me that she is trying to save face publicly by saying, I am accepting responsibility. I was brainwashed by Jodi Hildebrandt, and groveling to her family that she cut off when they tried to stop her, quoting the Bible, thanking the church, and the rest of it. But it doesn't feel like she actually believes what she's saying. The difficult thing for me is that based on everything I've seen from all of the channels that have been raising a red flag about the 8 Passengers YouTube channel for well before she met Jodi Hildebrandt, is that the making the kids sleep without beds and the extreme parenting and abusive behavior towards her children, be it physical or psychological, predates Jodi Hildebrandt. Jodi Hildebrandt, it seems that things got worse, but her behavior predates Jodi. So for her to say, I was brainwashed and rolling around in the mud with pigs is not what plays out over all of the YouTube channels that have been calling attention to her YouTube channel for years and showing that she was engaging in psychological abuse, in really deeply troubling what she called parenting techniques. And that is hard for me to see her say, oh, but I met Jodi Hildebrandt and everything changed. No, you don't just meet a person who is like, starve your kids and then you just do it. That's not grounded in reality. So all of this comes across as kind of a hollow excuse. For me, I do think she's embarrassed about how much she hurt her family in public. I genuinely do believe that. I do believe she's embarrassed that her marriage has ended. I believe she is, I believe that embarrassment is the top of this now that it's all been brought to light and everybody's like, what you can't do though is any of this. Let's continue on to hear what she has to say about Kevin.
My husband of more than 23 years. You are the love of my life. I'm so sorry to leave to you to finish what we both started together. The ending of our marriage is a tragedy. You are wrapped around my...
Your child had to escape horrific abuse. So I realize that you feel like the ending of your marriage is a tragedy, but what the fuck, man?
My heart, and that I'll never be able to undo.
It's a lot of analogy. It's a lot of analogy.
My babies, my 6 little chicks.
All right, chat. Let's take a collective deep breath as she talks about her children. We do adhere to no name calling in the chat. It is fine. I just want to remind you, it is fine to say that you don't believe her. It is fine to say that you're disgusted. It is fine to, I've seen all the vomit emojis. Totally fine. Completely understand. I get it. And thank you. You're allowed to have, obviously we have emotions and responses to this. It's disgusting to listen to. It's hard to listen to. Your feelings are valid. We're still going to listen to it because this is the person that we're dealing with. But she's going to get into trying to refer to her kids by pet names and be cutesy with it. And it's gross.
To my babies, my 6 little chicks, you were part of me. I was the mama duck who was consistently waddling you to safety. I can see now over the past 4 years I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger.
She's still distancing herself from what happened. I was your mama duck who was waddling you to safety. You waddled them into a life-threatening situation at your own hands. Ma'am, that's what you did. She is distancing herself from what happened. There's so many fucking analogies. There was an undercurrent that led us into danger. You're the danger. You're the danger.
I went into darkness knowingly. I was so disoriented.
You're the darkness.
But I believed dark was light and light was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you.
Bullshit. I would do anything in this world for you. You don't harm your children.
To sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly.
I'm going to back up because it's unfucking believable. She said, my willingness to sacrifice all for you was manipulated. This is manipulative.
Dark was light and light was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you. My willingness to sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. I took from you all that was soft and safe and good. I took from you your mother. And how terrifying this must have been for you. And I will still crying for hurting your tender souls. You're so precious to me. I'm sorry. My choice To live in fear of the world has created a great vulnerability and a blind spot for me.
I don't understand how your quote-unquote choice to live in fear of the world leads you to abusing your kids. I'm missing the connection, other than distancing yourself from your own behavior, which is so horrific. She might actually not be able to wrap her head around how bad what she did is. I don't know.
I have broken hearts, and I've caused people to suffer, and I have betrayed sacred trust.
That's true. You have caused people to suffer. That part's true.
My community respond to my charges with justice and mercy and grace and love is all the more evidence to me of how wrong I've been. This world is full of really good people. And finally, I'm sorry for twisting God's word and distorting his doctrines. My greatest desire is to stand in his court someday spotless and confident. And Judge Walton, I know that standing before you today is a necessary step towards that end. Thank you to you and your staff for facilitating my opportunity to take accountability and to answer for my charges. I am humbled.
I've never seen a defendant say, "Thank you, Your Honor, for giving me a venue to take accountability." It's giving YouTuber apology for everyone who said it in the chat. It is. She's trying to throw in words that make her seem like she has remorse.
And willing to serve a prison sentence as long as it takes.
You've already sentenced
to
that.
Continue unraveling all of the misinformation I have believed and bought, swallowed, and acted out. And for my family to heal and for the community to heal. And I understand this is going to take time. I'm committed to continuing my learning until all of my toxic layers are shed, and I am ready to re-enter as a contributing member of our beautiful society.
I hope that's true.
Thank you, Judge Walton.
I hope that's true. I hope that's true.
Statement, Ms. Franke, anything else, Mr. Windward?
I hope she is willing to be in prison as long as it takes and do the intensive work to truly face the life-threatening damage that she did to her children, because it's going to take them a lifetime to undo what she's done to them. The judge is going to pronounce sentence. Let's get on to that.
No, Your Honor.
Anything else prior to the court imposing sentence?
No, Your Honor.
The sentence will be that Ms. Franke serve 4 counts, 4 1 to 15-year sentences based on her convictions for 4 counts of aggravated child abuse.
This is the agreed upon sentence. Utah does indeterminate sentencing. Her sentence is 4 counts for 1 to 15 years. So the minimum of 4 years, but because they're second degree felonies, I think the maximum is 30, not 60. She is going to do upwards of 4 years. I would imagine less than 15. So I imagine that 15-year range is probably where she will end up. So 4 consecutive counts of 1 to 15 years. The second degree felonies in Utah max out. So it's not going to be 60 years. It's going to max out at 30. She's not going to get the maximum sentence. She's a first-time offender. And this will be what is determined by the parole and probation board over time. So a minimum of 4 years, more and maximum than that. So I see the chat asking, could she get out in 4 years? Theoretically, yes. Will she get more than that? Probably, given the horrific nature of the charges. Will it be 30 years? Unlikely. So it will probably be in that 10, maybe 15-year range. But it's not going to be in that maximum range. She is a first-time offender. In the criminal law sense, I know a lot of you are like, but we've watched her YouTube videos. We've seen what she's done for years. These are her first criminal charges. So the 4 years is going to be the minimum, and then they will determine from there how much time she will serve based on the indeterminate sentencing in Utah. I know that the prosecutor in Utah is advocating that this type of aggravated child abuse not be a second-degree felony, but a first-degree felony, so the times don't max out. It's frustrating to me when you have multiple victims that the times max out that way. I don't live and work in Utah. This is for Utahns to determine. Let's keep going.
Again, they will be served consecutively pursuant to the parties' agreement and the applicable statute. Under the applicable statute, the court finds that that consecutive sentences are appropriate. Ms. Franke, the last thing I do need to tell you is that you have only 30 days to file or to perfect an appeal.
She waived appeal.
Of any errors of the court by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the court. If you don't do that within 30 days,
so if the court made like a procedural error, but she waived appeal, she can't. It's a plea, so
you'll lose your right to appeal. You also have the right to the assistance of an attorney on appeal and to have one appointed if you cannot afford to hire your own. Restitution, as agreed by the parties, will remain open for a period of 8 months. Any of the parties can bring that matter back before the court within
I'm holding on to your questions. I'm going to do a full Q&A when we get to the end of this.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
All right, this is the end of Ruby Franke's sentencing. We're going to go to Jodi Hildebrandt, her co-defendant's sentencing.
The next matter before the court is State of Utah versus Hildebrandt.
I'm switching videos. We're going to Hildebrandt, and then we'll go to the press conferences. Thank you all for the compliments on my hair. I will get to Q&A when we get to this. When do we find out exactly how much time she gets is a lot of what y'all are asking. We won't know after 4 years from now. She has to do a minimum of 1 year on each count consecutive, and then they will determine. So we will see what happens next. But we're going to go to the sentencing of her co-defendant, Jodi Hildebrandt. Runkle, it's good to see you in the chat. You said something, I don't know what it was, something about Rust. I don't think there's a Rust hearing today. Jury selection starts Wednesday, unless you're making a Rust video, which I would completely understand. All right, let's switch to the Hildebrandt video, and then we'll go to the press conference, which we will either pull from the long crime feed, or if you see another feed, we will pull it, Miguelina, if you'll see if anyone has the press conference from the beginning. This is about an 11-minute sentencing, and we will see what happens. All right, let us continue on. Question, is consecutive running after each other? Yes, running after each other, not running concurrently. Can't she appeal the sentence? No, she can't. This is an agreed upon plea deal. So can she appeal the plea deal? No, no, she can't. And it's in her plea document, which I covered the last time. Dana, 4 years minimum. It is an open, indeterminate sentencing. Oh, Baldwin does have a hearing today. Yeah, that is, I forgot about Baldwin's hearing. I'm so focused on Hannah, I forgot about Baldwin's. All right, let's keep going with this. We're going to get to Jodi Hildebrandt's hearing in court.
Court recalls the matter of State of Utah versus Hildebrandt.
Let me bump this audio. Miguelina, if you'll just update our pin post that we are now at Jodi Hildebrandt's. Replay crew, as always, love you. Everything will be timestamped down below. I will try to pause this less. So let us all just take a big breath and get into the sentencing of co-defendant Jodi Hildebrandt.
Case 231501763. Counsel are present. Ms. Hildebrandt is present. Counsel, there is a pre-sentence investigation report. I have read it. Everyone has seen and reviewed that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Again, the sentence was stipulated at the time of the plea agreement.
It was agreed upon.
What record do we need to make other than going forward with sentencing?
Your Honor, it would be repetitive. I had the same statement
This is the prosecutor speaking, that the prosecutor's statement about what Jodi Hildebrandt did to the children would be somewhat repetitive about what he said of Ruby Franke. And since we're getting to watch these back and forth, we will get to hear some of that. So he's going to get into just the actions of Hildebrandt more.
Just with the last few paragraphs where I was differentiating between Ms. Franke and Ms. Hildebrandt.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about housekeeping matters first.
I like
What
this,
about
Judge.
Restitution.
And we've stipulated to keep that open for 8 months.
It is appropriate, Your Honor, since we don't have any evidence with respect to restitution, and that's because it is still in the process of being gathered by
Siblings.
the attorney's office. It's completely appropriate for the court to make no orders with respect to restitution other than to reserve all issues regarding restitution, and we have no issue with the eight-month time frame.
And the injunction that was previously issued by the court will remain in effect.
It will.
At least until that time.
It will.
The injunction that has been issued by the court is the injunction regarding the sale of Jodi Hildebrandt's house, and that the sale can't go forward and the money be dispersed until there is a restitution order here, because Jodi Hildebrandt has put her house up for sale for like, I don't know, millions, like $5+ million. So that is, that's what the court is talking about now. The amount of restitution is still undetermined. That's not uncommon in criminal cases. Going through criminal restitution is difficult. Will these children, through guardian ad litems, not the father, but through guardian ad litems, choose to civilly sue these women later? They could. I don't know if they will. It will really determine on what the criminal restitution is. After these cases are done, I will keep checking the docket to see if we learn an amount of criminal restitution, just so I can update you on that, so that you know what it is. But let's continue on with the sentencing.
Remain in effect until further order of this court.
All right.
I am holding on to your questions. If you guys have questions in the chat, I am holding them till we get to Q&A. If you put a question mark in the front, or question or a Q, it's a little easier for me to see. So I am pulling those in the chat. If you tag me in them, it's a little easier to see if you have questions. We will get to Q&A after this. Well, after the press conference.
The state of Utah respectfully requests that the court sentence Ms. Hildebrandt to consecutive prison terms.
This is bumped as loud as it can get. Sorry, Miguelina. This one is as loud. It's on 600. It is on all. I'll shut up. I'll stop talking.
For each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse to which she has pleaded guilty. The sentence was agreed to her in her plea agreement and is also recommended by adult probation and parole. Ms. Hildebrandt committed awful acts of child abuse. From May to August 2023, she and her business partner held 2 children, ages 9 and 11, turning 12, in a concentration camp-like setting in her house in Ivan City. The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were isolated from others and were hidden when people came to visit the house. They were forced to do physical tasks.
Again, when they talk about the fact that they were hidden when people came to the house, it indicates to me again that they know that it's wrong. This is not we think this is fine. If you think your behavior is fine, you don't hide your behavior. If you think it's cool.
Like carrying loaded boxes up and down stairs and doing wall sits or sitting against a wall without assistance of a chair or stool for hours at a time. They were forced to do manual labor outdoors in the extreme summer heat, often without shoes or socks. They were also forced to stand outside on a cement patio in the summer heat for hours and even days. They were beaten, and the 12-year-old was regularly bound hand and foot after he attempted to run away in mid-July. Both children had extensive physical injuries from the abuse that required hospitalization to treat. The injuries from the binding are particularly bad. In addition to the physical abuse, the children were emotionally abused. They each believed to some degree that they deserved what was being done to them. Had the older of the 2 children not had the courage to run away and ask a neighbor to call the police, heaven only knows how much longer he could have survived. After being caught, Ms. Hildebrandt has shown little to no remorse for her actions. In telephone conversations, that will be provided in full to the Board of Pardons and Parole, and which she knew to be recorded, she's repeatedly claimed that she is the victim and the children are the perpetrators.
That's new information for us. I wish this hearing was a little bit louder, but what the prosecutor just said is that in recorded conversations, so these would be in jail calls, these will be provided to parole, that Jodi Hildebrandt has showed no remorse and that she has continued to say that she is the victim and that the children are the perpetrators. This is not the first time I'm sure any of you in the chat have heard abusers say, but you made me do it because. It's horrific to hear, but this is sadly not uncommon when you see people perpetrating abuse on others, that they believe that their actions are somehow fucking required. It's horrific, but this is what is on her jail calls, that the prosecutor has said she has shown no remorse and believes that she is the victim. I feel your rage, chat.
She's gone so far as to say that the things said in this proceeding and covered by the media today will be full of lies.
She said that in recorded jail calls, that the things said in the sentencing hearing and in the media is full of lies. Ma'am, I don't know if there's enough therapy in the world to undo that. To undo that.
Claimed that she is the victim and the children are the perpetrators. She has gone so far as to say that the things said in this proceeding and covered by the media today will be full of lies.
Yeah, they're going to keep listening to your calls, ma'am.
The combination of three factors make Ms. Hildebrandt a significant threat to the community. First, the severity of the abuse she caused to be inflicted on young children. Second, her attitude that everything she did was justified and that she is being wrongfully imprisoned.
What she said to the, well, it seems like from jail calls, is that she is being wrongfully imprisoned and that all of her actions are justified. It's absolutely unbelievable.
And third, her training as a therapist and aptitude for using online resources to convince others to follow her guidance. Utah Code Section 76.3.401 lays out three factors the court should consider in determining whether to impose concurrent or consecutive sentences. The first is the gravity and circumstances of the offense. The second is the number of victims. And the third is the history, character, and rehabilitative need of the defendant. As agreed to in the plea agreement and as recommended by Idaho Probation and Parole, consecutive sentences are appropriate here. This is due to the severity of the abuse to the two victims and the extreme need for Ms. Hildebrandt to be rehabilitated so that she no longer will present a risk to the community. The state respectfully requests
extreme need for rehabilitation, i.e. she needs to realize that the behavior that she has exhibited is not tolerated in a civilized society. You don't abuse children and then say, but I'm the victim here. So the fact that she has an accepted responsibility is what they are the prosecutor is highlighting for the court.
That she be sentenced to 4 consecutive terms.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Terry?
Thank you, Your Honor. I will be brief. As is always the case in cases that come before courts, there are two sides to every case.
Sir, your argument is there's two sides to this. Sir, they're children. I understand you're the defense attorney, but what I was expecting from this defense attorney was my client has remorse. Not that there's two sides to horrific child abuse, cause no.
And as and even in a case like this, that remains.
Emily's opinion. This defense attorney doesn't really know what to say and maybe shouldn't have said much because his client is showing no remorse. That is my opinion. That is what this speech is giving. But Your Honor, there's two sides to every story. She pled guilty to child abuse. Oh, God. All right. I'm going to let her defense attorney run through. I'm going to try to let it go and not yell about it, but commentary. And now I'm pushing the wrong buttons.
And as, and even in a case like this, that remains the case.
No.
There are many, many allegations regarding these two individuals, Ms. Franke and my client, Ms. Hildebrandt. The only facts in this case that are adjudicated facts are those set forth in the plea agreement that she entered into freely and knowingly and voluntarily.
And that should have been your entire speech as a defense attorney. Your Honor, my client entered into a plea and accepted responsibility for this case and continues to accept responsibility. And then you sit down. If there's nothing you can say other than there are two sides to every single criminal case, the facts in the stipulated plea agreement are so bad that I did not read them on the internet because they are horrific. The facts in this case aren't a gray zone, sir.
Those facts, those adjudicated facts, are significant.
Yup.
Certainly provide a basis for the pleas and provide a basis for the stipulated sentence.
Yeah, they do.
Case. My experience with Ms. Hildebrandt is that she is not the person that she has been portrayed to be. But having said that, she has accepted responsibility in this case. She has entered into this plea agreement with a stipulated sentence of 4 consecutive sentences. She did that at the time she entered into the plea agreement, knowing that that would be the court's order. She is before the court today, knowing that that will be the court's order, and she fully accepts that.
That's not what her jail calls say.
And she accepts the consequences for her conduct. And we will submit it to the court on the stipulated agreement.
Yeah, that's all. Sit down.
Terry, you suggested that there are two sides to every case. I generally agree with you.
Oh, the court has words. The court has words. To the defense attorney, sir, I generally agree with you. The court coming in with, not in this case, buddy. I'm very excited to hear what the court has to say.
Ms. Hildebrandt didn't make a statement to AP&P
What?
in the course of the pre-sentence investigation report.
Correct.
Why did she not make a statement?
What? Your Honor, you're joking. So what the court just said is that Hildebrandt chose not to participate in her pre-sentencing report. She did not make a statement about this case in the pre-sentencing report. The pre-sentencing report is what their Department of Prisons and Probation is going to base her sentence on. And Runkle, ever the defense attorney in the chat, is saying she's entitled to not make a statement. I agree with you that she is entitled to not make a statement, but she's sitting here saying she accepts responsibility and there's two sides to every story. And so the court's like, okay, then tell me your side, ma'am. If you want to tell your side, why not? Interesting.
Make a statement.
She wanted to reserve her right to make a statement before the court today, and she has a brief statement that she wants to read, Your Honor.
Okay.
And
all right.
She wanted to reserve her statement. Okay.
Go ahead.
I sincerely love these children.
The DA, ma'am, told us what you've been saying in your jail calls. So to start with, I sincerely love these children isn't, it's a no for me, ma'am. It's a no. We're starting with a no. Nope. Negative, Ghost Rider.
Go ahead.
I sincerely love these children.
This is not love.
I desire them to heal physically and emotionally. One of the reasons I did not go to trial is that I did not want them to emotionally relive the experience which would have been detrimental to them. My hope and prayer is that they will heal and move forward to have beautiful lives. I am willing to submit to what the state feels would be an appropriate amount of time served to make retribution as an outcome.
And in answer to your question, Your Honor, I knew that whatever she might say to the author of the pre-sentence report would probably sound hollow and self-serving, and perhaps it does today. But
well, there's a little bit of self-awareness. Her defense attorney said, Your Honor, part of why she didn't make a statement in the pre-sentence report is because it would sound hollow and self-serving. Well, we have come to the truth in court today. Yep. You're ding, 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 counsel. It's weird that her defense attorney is saying that. That's normally something the prosecutor would be arguing. But he's saying it would come across as hollow and self-serving, probably because he also knows what's on the jail calls. So
I know that my client, in the statement that she makes to the court today, that statement is absolutely sincere.
Does Ms. Hildebrandt recognize that it's her behavior that caused the harm to the children that she's referred to in her statement?
Your Honor, she recognizes that she was, along with Ms. Franke, that she made decisions with respect to the discipline of those children that were wrong, that caused...
He's still calling it discipline and not abuse, which is an interesting thing. To give credit, Ruby Franke said abuse in her statement. She did not try to say it was discipline. We are going to talk about the fact that Jodi Hildebrandt viewed this as discipline later, when a lot of you have asked about why this wasn't charged differently, because the goal here was disciplining the children. It was abuse. But Jodi Hildebrandt and her lawyer seemingly are still placing the horrific acts they did under the gambit of this was disciplining their child, or Ruby Franke's children.
Harm to those children. She fully recognizes that and accepts responsibility for that.
She recognizes she made bad decisions. Listen to what he said. He said this was discipline and that she made bad choices. That's what the lawyer's arguing.
That she was, along with Ms. Franke, that she made decisions with respect to the discipline of those children that were wrong, that caused harm to those children.
Abuse, it's abuse.
She fully recognizes that and accepts responsibility for that.
All right.
These were not bad choices. This was child abuse. My face is why I could never be a defense attorney. I could not. The world needs good defense attorneys. I could never be one of them because these words could not come out of my mouth.
Anything else?
Hopefully not. Oh, good. And we're done.
Ms. Hildebrandt,
time to sentence.
This circumstance.
I'm very interested to see what the court has to say because he's already speaking. The judge didn't have much to say to Ruby Franke, just stated the sentence. I'm interested to see what the court has to say here.
This is tragic. I'm
going to back up because I interrupted. That's what I do.
Ms. Hildebrandt, this circumstance is tragic.
This case,
it's
abuse.
Largely, of course, of your making. By any measure,
get it, Your Honor.
Your conduct in this case was disastrous for these children. Adults are supposed to protect children.
Yes.
Adults with specialized training in particular are supposed to protect
yes.
children.
Get her.
Do that in this case. In this case.
Ma'am, you're a fucking therapist. Get her. Get her.
You terrorize children, and the results have been tragic. It's
horrific. Appalling. Disgusting.
What happened to these children and your philosophy in dealing with them, frankly, seems detached from reality or any objective standard of decency or even common sense. And the court finds that it is appropriate that you serve a prison
Those are strong
sentence.
words.
The court
from the
finds
judge.
under the statute, Utah Code 76-3-401, that given the gravity and circumstances of the offenses, the number of victims, and the history and character and needs of the defendant, that consecutive sentences are appropriate. The court imposes 4 1 to 15-year sentences to be, again, served consecutively for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. The last thing I do need to tell you is that you only have 30 days to file or perfect an appeal of any error of the court by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the court.
Her
if you don't
plea
do
agreement.
that, you will lose your right to appeal. That has to be filed in writing and again within 30 days. You also have the right to the assistance of an attorney and to have an attorney appointed if you cannot afford to hire your own. Thank you. We're in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And that is the end of the sentencing for Jodi Hildebrandt from KUTV. We're going to go to the press conference that happened after, and then I'll get to Q&A with y'all. Let's just summarize where we're at, and then we'll go to the press conference. Good? Jodi, Franke, and Ruby, I was going to combine their names. Let's do that again. Y'all just ignore that. Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt have both been sentenced in Utah to 4 consecutive sentences of 1 to 15 years. Utah uses an indeterminate sentence, meaning the prison parole board is going to determine how much time these women actually spend in prison. But because it is 4 counts of 1 to 15 years, it is going to be a minimum of 4 years consecutive, one after the other. Could they get good time, work time for a portion of that? Yes. Do I think either of them will get out in less than 4 years? I think that's unlikely. Do I think ultimately Jodi Hildebrandt will end up spending more time? Based on the DA's statements in court today, I do. The DA indicated that Jodi Hildebrandt was on recorded jail calls indicating that she is a victim in this, that the prosecution is unjust, that the children are to blame here, and that everything that's going to be said in court is lies. And though she gave a brief statement to the court had some very strong words for her. Because these are second-degree felonies in Utah, the maximum either of these women could spend in custody is 30 years. It is unlikely that either of them will spend that amount of time in custody, even though they are sentenced consecutively for 1 to 15 years for 4 different counts. So we will see them serve some amount of time over that 4-year mark as determined by the Utah Board of Prisons and Parole. If and when the pre-sentencing reports are made public, we might have a little bit more information about what the board is thinking, and we will keep an eye on that here. As to restitution for the children, that's being kept open for 8 months to determine the full amount of restitution. That full amount is not in, but these women are being sentenced today. They will start serving their prison term as soon as they are transported, and then the board will determine how much time above that 4-year mark, but below that 30-year mark, they will serve. We're going to go to the press conference now and take a look at what was said after the sentencings happened in court in Utah this morning. All right, let me pull up that press conference, y'all. For those of you asking, but isn't 15 times 4 60? Correct, your math is right. Utah has a cap on second-degree felonies. 30 years is the maximum. Indeterminate sentencing is weird to me, y'all. I didn't work in an indeterminate sentencing jurisdiction. As a DA in Los Angeles County, I went in and was like, Your Honor, we've offered the defendant 20 years. And then it was like, okay, 20 years. And then you get whatever good time, work time there isn't. 20 years. It's odd to me that they have the range and then the parole board just gets to decide. It's different. Not all jurisdictions do it that way. I've not worked in a jurisdiction that did it that way, but the minimum here that we're looking at for each is 4 years. So let's go to this press conference. And I have not found it on a cleaner feed. It makes it kind of hard because Law and Crime uses huge lower thirds. It makes it a little hard to see some of the captioning, but we're going to pull the press conference already in action from that feed because I have not seen it elsewhere. And let me try to bump that audio. All right, let's take a look at the press conference from after this. Oh, for those of you asking, there were no victim impact statements. The victims have the opportunity to give information in the pre-sentencing report. Family members have the opportunity to give information in the pre-sentencing report. That information can be communicated. You don't really need to go into court in this way and do it. And I think that's what's appropriate here, given the nature of the charges. Susan Rogers in the chat has said, please stop analyzing so much. No. That's what I do. There are other channels that just run the court feeds, but as a lawyer with over almost 20 years experience, analyzing is literally what I do. So I'm disinclined to acquiesce to that request. All right, let's go to the press conference.
My career, but in our office's career, in our institutional memory, this is one of the worst child.
This is the prosecutor. Let me back up and see if there we go. Right at the beginning.
It's heartfelt. Now, I'm being told right now that there is actually a press conference by the prosecutor.
I got smooch on my glasses.
Actively hiding things, and because the abuse was horrific, and it would have been apparent to anybody that would have seen the kids that something was wrong here.
Is this some of the worst child abuse you've seen in your career?
Yes, and not just in my career, but in our office's career, in our institutional memory. This is...
I don't know how to express it properly. Some of my dearest friends in the LA District Attorney's Office worked in abuse against children, specifically abuse against children. There's a whole special unit that deals with it. If you're ever interested, we could talk more about how the office sets up some of those units and works with hospitals and counselors to do a lot of multifactorial prosecutions of child abuse. But I have very good friends who worked in it. And for this district attorney to say this in our institution, this is some of the worst child abuse we have seen, is probably why these are second-degree felonies and why there hasn't been a push for more, because they are not seeing it. This is not just in the kind of cases that I have dealt with, and I was not a specialized prosecutor in child abuse, not one of the worst cases I've ever seen, and definitely not some of the worst cases my colleagues have worked on. It's interesting for me or odd for me to hear him say that in their prosecutor's office, and I imagine it's a much smaller jurisdiction than ours, but in their prosecutor's office, in their institutional memory, this is one of the worst instances of child abuse that they've ever seen. I'm thankful that there isn't worse child abuse going on. It's just it's interesting to see, because unfortunately there is a lot more in the world.
This is one of the worst child abuse cases that we've seen.
You consider this precedent setting?
No.
Can you?
That's a dumb question. Sorry. No, it's not precedent setting. This is they got arrested, they got charged, they got sentenced. There is no unique precedent to set in the case law unless it's changing the law so that multiple victim child abuse becomes a first-degree felony. It shouldn't have to be murder to be a first-degree felony. You can bump multi-victim child abuse to a first-degree felony. That would change the law, but that's not legal precedent. That's not the right use of that word. I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to yell at the reporter.
In terms of the actual sentences they end up serving?
No, because I think the board takes everything into account.
Accurate.
So specifically.
You think Jodi's going to end up serving more?
I hope so.
The traffic noises are terrible. Courthouses do not allow you to film in the courthouse. They're all standing on the street outside of the courthouse. But what he said is, do you think Jodi will get more time than Ruby? And he said, I hope so.
I hope that Jodi does serve more. I think that that would only be fair. I think that Ruby should serve. So the sentence that they got is basically 4 to 30 years today, right? The 4 1-year minimum stat, and then in Utah you're capped at 30 years. I think that a 4-year minimum for Ruby's actions are entirely appropriate.
We're doing a poll. We're doing a poll. Chat, the prosecutor on the case. I'm not the prosecutor on the case. I'm a legal commentator on the internet. The prosecutor on the case said, I think the 4 years is entirely appropriate for Ruby Franke. I'm putting up a poll. Do you agree? Maybe I'm too mean. Prosecutor, that 4 years for Ruby is the 4 years for Ruby is the right sentence. All right. Yes, no. I think we need a fuck no option. Yes, no, fuck no. I think that's right. Add one more option. It depends. No. Fuck it. Yes, no, fuck no. Those are our options for the poll. All right, let's start this poll. You guys let me know in the chat. I was not expecting that. Let's keep going, sir. I have questions.
I hope that Jodi serves more time than that, and I hope that she isn't out of prison until everybody is completely confident that she's no longer a risk. And
Is Ruby not still a risk, though, sir? Is Ruby not still a risk?
And to get there, she's going to have to acknowledge that she has done wrong.
She's gonna have to take responsibility.
That you can't use religion as a means to justify your crazy behavior.
Do you think
I mean, I agree with that.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand, why would the mother, in your opinion, deserve less time when she's torturing her kids versus a stranger? Wouldn't you hold a parent?
I appreciate this question. Wouldn't you hold a parent more responsibility than a stranger?
More accountable?
And again, so they both got the same deal, right? Like we didn't give her a less of a minimum time. Part of the mission of what we do when we incarcerate people, I'll obviously want to see justice done. And a mother abusing her children in this way is awful.
Yup.
And people should go to prison for that.
Yup. Yup.
Something that is really important is that people shouldn't be released from prison unless they've hit the maximum amount of time they should be in, or they've done enough that justice is served, and it's clear that they're no longer a risk to the community. And I'm super concerned that Jodi, if she were released today, is a significant risk to gather followers. Ruby was essentially a follower of Jodi. And if she's gathering gathering people and then convincing them to do this kind of thing, that's a huge risk. And those type of people shouldn't be walking the streets when they've committed these kind of crimes.
There was some back and forth with the restitution piece of this. Can you explain where you are with that?
Restitution?
So there were a couple of motions filed over the course of the last month about that.
Yes.
And we anticipate a restitution claim coming in that will cover ongoing therapy and physical care, physical recovery if needed, of the victims of these crimes.
Ongoing therapy and then physical medical care, not just mental health care.
Crimes.
Yes.
The state hasn't submitted a claim for restitution yet, and we want to make sure that there's plenty of time for all of that to be kind of analyzed and brought in before we close out restitution.
Okay, that's fair.
And that should be the same for both defendants, right? Like both of them will end up with restitution orders against them.
It should be joint and several restitution. Agreed.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yep, I have a written statement that kind of recapitulates some of what I said in there and just talks a little bit about this. You guys are welcome to have that. We'll email that out also.
Thank you.
And thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Let's see if anybody else has any statements to make. This is chaotic out in front of this courthouse. They normally have like a little stand where you put all the mics in and somebody stands there. Instead, it's like a bunch of microphones and a guy with an umbrella. It's like, here, talk. It's just, okay.
It's 115 per count.
Yeah.
But there's a
cap
that says if you're not convicted of a first degree felony, you can't do more than 30.
Why didn't they just ask that in the press conference instead of like us trying to listen to him having a conversation in the background?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, Lauren.
All right, let's see if we can get to anybody else coming out in the press conference. It looks like so far there's nobody else outside of court. This is one of the defense attorneys. Let's see.
Insight into her conduct.
Completely always stated for this
nope.
person before.
I want to hear the defense attorney talk. Sorry, I don't want to hear commentary. Like, it becomes commentary inception. I'm interested to hear what the defense attorney has to say.
Can heal, but never would not right now.
He's talking.
I agree.
Gonna have to cut you off. Defense.
Many years. With many layers that happened over many years. It is not one that can be adequately told in one setting, let alone at a press conference. At Windward Law, we know the sorrow our client feels and the remorse she carries. We know of her commitment to heal and provide healing for her family. We give thanks to all who have provided support during this very difficult process. Thank you.
We missed the beginning of what he said. This is Ruby's defense attorney, but it was, I'm sure Windward Law will have a statement on their website, but this is a story that can't be told at a press conference. Please, dear God, tell me there's not going to be a book, sir, because we really want Ruby to just go to prison and not do anything else.
Sure. So the judge talked very differently to Defendant Hildebrandt versus your client. Do you have any comment on that?
I'll just leave it at what Judge Walton said. I think he was very accurate.
She addressed her husband and children in her statement, yet she never turned around to look at him, not even when she left. What do you know about their communication levels at this point?
That's a good question. The question is, she never turned around to look at her husband or children, which indicates that they were in the courtroom.
I don't, because her husband and family have attorneys, it's difficult for communication to happen except through attorneys. That's an unfortunate consequence sometimes of our legal system in domestic cases.
But she didn't even turn around, didn't look at him.
That's probably by design. We're addressing the court in that proceeding, even though we address family.
Apparently somebody's driving like an F-16 down the street, but the attorney for Ruby Franke is saying there are still domestic cases going on, and there still are. There's the divorce case and the case over the custody and legal custody of the children. So that's kind of where he's saying this is legal process, so she can't turn around.
What do you expect for the future of her relationship with her children?
I'm hoping that that healing will happen, and that not just physically but emotionally and family-wise, that will be,
I agree,
a source of positive in the future.
Has she had any family visitors?
I hope that healing also happens. 100% hope that healing happens.
Visitors in her time while she's been incarcerated?
Different family members have reached out through the local jail and have communicated with her, yes.
But not Kevin?
Not to my knowledge.
Kevin shouldn't be having conversations with her, though, until at least this plea was made, because he was still potentially a witness in this case. And there's a divorce proceeding and there's a parental proceeding. So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't have any communication.
Are her children that are older and above 18?
Not to my knowledge. Thank you all.
What do you think a fair sentence for her is, ultimately, the time served?
The question was, what do you think a fair sentence for her is?
To leave that to the Board of Pardons, because that is their entire province, and mine would be a pure guess.
How does that complicate things based on today?
Pardon?
How does that complicate things based on today? I mean, you hear a sentencing that's very similar to...
How does what complicate things?
what was already described in court. How does the Board of Pardons and Parole fit into this entire nuance here and kind of drag out a process a little bit?
They ultimately have the ultimate decision-making to determine what is the adequate sentence after periods of time have elapsed.
The prosecution said this is the worst child abuse case their office has ever seen. What's it like on the other side of that?
I don't think it's the worst.
The defense attorney said, I don't think it's the worst. The prosecutor said it's the worst. We'll see.
It's bad, but it's not the worst.
It is bad. I don't, honestly, I don't I would find it hard to believe that this, I mean, maybe this is a very small jurisdiction. The prosecutor's statement seemed odd to me. We're going to stay through the entire press conference. We're going to get through all the statements made to the press right now.
Thank you all.
Actually, I'm going to pause real quick because I need to refresh because my chat crashed. So I need to refresh my screen because my chat crashed. So now is a good time to remind you a couple of things. One, if you are new here, I do legal commentary, sometimes of court documents, sometimes of live court hearings. If that is something that you enjoy, do the YouTube-y things. You know what they are. I've been live for like an hour and a half and I haven't even asked. Do the YouTube-y things. Also, my 12-year-old doesn't believe I'm a real YouTuber until I hit 1 million subscribers. So is that a bit of a vanity metric for me? Sure is. But we do legal commentary here and have the best chat on the internet. Second, if you are anticipating the Rust case going to trial and want to stay in the loop with the Rust trial, lawnerdapp.com, our free app for you, iOS, Android, available on your devices. I will keep you in the loop with what's going on with that trial as we get into Hannah Gutierrez's trial later this week. I've been in communication with the pool camera. There will be camera access for it. So I will be covering gavel to gavel that trial. So if you like live court and me explaining live court, you're going to absolutely want to download the Lawnerd app. So let me go ahead now that my chat is back up and running and I could see it. I could see it on the Streamyard end because Streamyard does not disappoint. Streamyard's got my back. YouTube at this point crashed. So if you guys are streamers, Streamyard is the way to be. I love working with them. I am a Streamyard affiliate, so I love it. Makes it easy. But that's how I could still see part of the chat and hold on to your questions. We're doing Q&A after we do these press conferences. Let's see who's next. The way I hate listening to the traffic, I am too ADHD to listen to just traffic noises in the background.
Maybe right here.
It's freaking killing me. All right, hold on. Emily, you've flown too close to the sun and your avoidance of background noise. Yes.
Do you want to just, maybe go right here. Mr. Terry, if you could start with saying your first name and last.
Douglas Terry.
As we get into the defense attorney for Jodi Hildebrandt, I'm going to go ahead and end our poll with regard to Ruby Franke. 5% said yes, 4 years is the right amount of sentencing. Again, I'm not passing judgment on any of you that believe it. This is just your opinion. Y'all are entitled to it. 26% said no. 69% said fuck no. I imagine that the 26% that just said no instead of fuck no are the percentage that maybe don't love me using the cursey words. So 69% of you think 4 years is not enough time for Ruby Franke. I absolutely understand. Z1Z said, question, why do they have a 30-year cap? That is the statutory law in Utah for second-degree felonies. This is a second-degree felony. Therefore, there is a cap. That is the way the law is written. Could Utah change the law? Yes. Is this prosecutor's office advocating for that? That is what they've said. Do I think that there should be a cap when you have multiple victims of child abuse in that way? Doesn't sit right with me. I didn't write the laws in the state of Utah, so we will see what happens. All right, we are getting into the statement by Jodi Hildebrandt's defense attorney. Let's take a look.
I represent Jodi Hildebrandt.
Doug, you said two sides to every story. It didn't seem like the judge agreed. What do you make of that back and forth in dialogue?
The seriousness of the case,
Also, thank God they turned around with the courthouse in the background, so we're not getting all the noise. whichever on-site reporter producer decided to do that, thank you for making everyone's life easier.
Of the allegations, the seriousness of the facts that both Ms. Franke and Ms. Hildebrandt pled guilty to. I was not surprised at all by the judge's comments and questions of my client.
You've heard the jail calls.
I'm not prepared to go into specifics with respect to facts that are disputed in this case. I will.
She pled guilty to specific and horrific child abuse. What facts that are in dispute, sir?
Stand by what I said on her behalf in the sentencing hearing, and that is that she entered into this plea agreement to take responsibility for her conduct in this case. Her statement that she hopes for both the physical and emotional healing of these children is absolutely sincere. How much time she serves will ultimately be up to the Board of Pardons, as with Miss Franke.
When she said that she loved the children, Chad and Sherry had smirks and were looked shocked on their faces. Do you have a comment about that?
That doesn't surprise me, but again, she was sincere in that statement.
Do you think she should have had more to say? Ruby spoke for a very detailed length of time, and Jodi had a few sentences. Did you go over that with her? Was there an opportunity for her to say more?
She had the opportunity to say whatever she wanted to say. I did not put words in her mouth. I wanted her to make a statement from the heart. That's what she felt like she needed to convey today, that it's about the children, not about her, and that's what she did.
The prosecution said there's phone calls that are recorded in which Hildebrandt lacks
They said
remorse. What do you know about those phone calls, and is she?
I know that early on in the case, she had phone calls with individuals that were in support of her, did not believe that she did the things that she was accused of doing. I have not listened to those phone calls, as the county attorney's office has.
You haven't listened to the phone calls before you walked into this sentencing? Okay, sir.
But again, whatever was said was early in the case, and that is not her position today.
So
she didn't say that. She didn't say that. She didn't say that, and you didn't say that. Maybe you should have said that to the judge. You didn't, but isn't it your job to listen to your client's phone calls? I'm just saying. As often is the case when individuals are charged, arrested, accused, sometimes it's a process to come to the point where they take responsibility and accept the consequences.
A lot of people have spoken out about other victims in this case, the victims of Jodi and other different sorts. And I know this is about the children, but how much does that weigh into what you guys have discussed with Jodi?
As far as other victims, that has not been a factor.
Well, and prosecutors are saying that they're hoping that Jodi gets a lengthier, a heavier sentence. They feel that she's kind of the ringleader in this whole situation.
That's the prosecution's position. It has been from the beginning. As I said when we entered into the plea agreement, she did not do that because Ms. Franke had agreed to testify against her. That decision was made before Ms. Franke ever agreed to testify against her to cooperate with the state.
Mr. Terry, you said that there were two sides to every case. What is the side of Jodi Hildebrandt that we're not seeing?
I'm not going to go into the specific.
Then why did you say it in court? Of course the media is going to say, sir, you said there's two sides of every case. Would you like to explain? I'm not going to get into it. Sir, then don't say it.
Of allegations that she agrees with and doesn't agree with. I will stand by the statement that I made in the sentencing hearing, and that is that the factual basis that is set forth in the plea agreement, those are the only adjudicated facts in the case. She admitted to those facts.
Hold on. Emily, speculation. I think what he is taking issue with is that Jodi Hildebrandt is being characterized by Ruby Franke as the one who is doing the brainwashing and the one behind this. I think that's where he's taking issue with this, saying, look, Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt acted together, not that Jodi Hildebrandt is this person who's brainwashing everyone into taking these actions. It seems to me that's what he's sidestepping here. Could be wrong, but that's my speculation on what he's sidestepping, is the claims that Jodi is some kind of the one who's brainwashing people. However, we've heard multiple people talk about the fact that this is what Jodi Hildebrandt did, that people brought their children and their teens to her for therapy, and her quote unquote therapy was abusive, gaslighting, coercive control.
She takes responsibility for those facts. She's been sentenced on those facts.
This is a small, family-oriented community, and her home was essentially likened to a concentration camp. How did she square that? How did she work around living in this community while there was a house of horrors?
I'm not prepared to respond to that. That's an allegation that I heard for the first time today. I mean, I'm
going to back up and try to hear this question a little bit better, because it was really hard to hear with the road noise, which is just what it is. But he said it's the first time he's heard this today.
She takes responsibility for those facts. She's been sentenced on those facts.
This is a small, family-oriented community, and her home was essentially likened to a concentration camp. How did she... this is what the reporter is saying. This is a small, family-oriented community, and her home was being likened to a concentration camp. That's what she's asking him to respond to. She square that? How did she work around living in this community while there was a house of horrors?
Oh, and then called it a house of horrors.
I'm not prepared to respond to that. That's an allegation that I heard for the first time today. I mean, that's a characterization by the prosecutors.
Yeah, that's the
prosecution's
characterization.
But that's from their perspective, and I'm not prepared to address that.
You don't feel that's an accurate description?
I do not.
You disagree with that?
I do.
I could never be a reporter because I'd be so terrible at it. But he's like, I'm not responding to that. I'd be like, okay, the reporters are continuing to say, so you don't agree with that characterization. And then he goes ahead and answers it anyway.
Ms. Hildebrandt, has she expressed remorse to you about what happened?
Many times. Many times.
What is her...
Has she expressed remorse to you? Many times, he says. Many times. Okay.
You disagree with that?
I do.
Has Ms. Hildebrandt, has she expressed remorse to you about what happened?
Many times. Many times.
What is her remorse? What is she sorry about?
That she didn't make different decisions and that would have resulted in the children being more protected.
Is she delusional?
I'm not going to respond.
I don't know who's asking the questions, but the reporter that's asking the question just said, is she delusional? Yeah, I mean, get it, I guess. He's like, I'm not going to answer that, but okay. I mean, get it with the questions.
Has she had people come visit her family? I know Ruby has a larger family that has been a little bit more present at some of the hearings, but has she had some support in all of this?
I don't know that she's had visits, personal visits, but I know that she's been in contact with people who are supportive of her.
No family, though?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Is she going to sell her home? I know the restitution can play out for...
It's for sale, yes. Based on the fact that we anticipated a prison sentence, yes, it's for sale.
She's going to prison for at a minimum 4 years and likely longer. I'm not surprised she's selling her house. So yeah, of course she's selling her house.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I mean, I love that a reporter was straight up, excuse me, sir, is she delulu? We would like to know, is she delusional? That seems to be what the prosecutor indicated. Let's see who is coming to the podium next. And
here, I'll answer your questions.
Who we're going to hear from next.
Hi there. Okay, we've got another interview.
Do you guys want to know who Jodi Hildebrandt is?
Yeah, we would like. Are you going to tell us if she's delulu? I would love to know.
Here, I'll answer your question.
Oh, he's just taking the mic. He's like, I've got you. I've got you.
He's her attorney. He can't answer him. My name's Adam Paul Steed, and if you guys want to know who Jodi Hildebrandt is, I'll answer tons of questions about her. I know my dad. Hey, Dad, come here. Come here. My dad has a file at home that's probably about 2,500 pages of records from court filings and just huge amount of documentation about Jodi Hildebrandt that we will share with everybody. I want you to know the same court that...
I love that he's like, I'll tell you what the fuck happened. Took the mic, the reporter got out of the way, and we are going to hear what Adam has to say. Chat, you guys know who Adam is. Clue us in. It seems that he is somebody who survived Jodi Hildebrandt based on the chat. All right, let's go. Does he have a YouTube channel? Does he discuss this YouTube podcast? Chat, let me know.
Has ordered us not to share these documents is covering up this racket that Jodi Hildebrandt had with the Mormon Church in the 4th District, Utah County.
Oh, the long crime added immediately. Adam Steed, former patient of Jodi Hildebrandt.
Court. She abused my children the same way, almost, even in a different type of abuse. I think it could be argued worse. And that was 15 years ago. And I fought against Jodi Hildebrandt with my family and everybody to stop this monster of a lady. And Jodi went after me. She went after me, destroyed my life in the craziest way you could ever think of possible. Like, I was a victim of sexual abuse at Boy Scouts of America, Camp Little Lemhi in Idaho. And my dad helped us stop a predator. You can read it in the national press and everything. We changed the laws of sexual abuse so victims could come forward. We got rid of the criminal and civil statute limitations. The Mormon Church knew who we were. And Elder Helam, Richard G. Helam, was like next.
He's naming all the names. He has a whole lot to say. All right, we're gonna let him say it.
President of the First Quorum of the 70, the top probably executive functioning leader of the whole Mormon Church. And he sat with Jodi Hildebrandt as they destroyed my life in this court racket, like they've destroyed countless other people's lives. And they even had the gall to order my Mormon Stories thing, where I brought some documentation off the internet, saying that they didn't want me to say.
They ordered the Mormons. I think what he's referring to Mormon Stories, he's referring to the Mormon Stories podcast. Ordered it off the internet. I've got questions about that too. Like, what?
Say bad things to my children or in front of the children about my ex-wife. Well, if you're accused of sexual abuse by Jodi Hildebrandt, and if your ex-wife performed a falsification of sexual abuse, that professionals looked at the documentation and said, this is sexual abuse. This is sexual abuse. We have documentation for sexual abuse of my children by Jodi Hildebrandt and my ex-wife. And, you know, this stuff was redacted in the Doppel paperwork. It was so horrible that it was redacted. And the courts just recently said I couldn't talk about my family or my ex-wife or anything. But if you have children, if
the court said he can't talk about it, I wonder how long this will be up. But let's hear what he has to say. I'm so glad there's so many of you here live.
Children were trained to think that your dad was sexual predator and a monster.
So I'm sorry, we came in a little bit late. Why is it that you wanted to be here?
Okay, so there are tons, and it's not Jodi Hildebrandt is the tip of the iceberg. The Mormon Church was doing this operation where they were using religious beliefs and they were using ethical therapists to enforce them, and it was an area of exploitation, and it was a horrific area. It was exploitation because it created horrible divorces that should have been normal divorces. We're talking about hundreds and thousands of families going through these courts, and Jodi was like an icon. Her doctrine. Okay, so here's the problem. Everybody.
So today it sounds like was a little bit of like justice for you too.
Oh, Jodi, yeah, Ruby Frank. When I saw Ruby Frank, I saw my ex-wife.
I think he is, I appreciate the reporter kind of grounding the story because he clearly has a lot to say and has been dealing with this for years. It's interesting to me that he is starting to say when he saw what Ruby Franke was going through, he saw what his ex-wife went through, lending a little bit of weight to Ruby Franke's statement that in fact, Jodi Hildebrandt is the one who was pulling these families apart. That seems to be what he's saying.
Okay, so here's the problem. Everybody.
So today it sounds like was a little bit of like justice for you too.
Oh, Jodi, yeah, Ruby Frank. When I saw Ruby Frank, I saw my ex-wife sitting there saying the exact same thing. That my ex-wife would have said the exact same thing Ruby Franke said today, and a lot of other women would have said the same thing. You have no idea how many victims are out there that their minds have been messed up so much with this. The prosecutor said that he said that the children thought it was their fault. All of the adult men think it's their fault. All of the women think it's their fault. I have had countless emails and messages.
Sorry, what was your name?
I'm Adam Paul Steed. I'm the guy that got Jodi's license from Doppel removed. Well, my dad and mom get the credit. But, you know, and they said that the Doppel department said, we have evidence here for criminal charges against
It's hard because he is in the middle of a story because he is so clearly emotional in the moment with how long he's dealt with this, which makes it difficult to give all of the context. I appreciate the reporters that are trying to redirect so that the story is clear, but he said his parents are the ones who are responsible for getting Jodi Hildebrandt's license removed.
13 years ago. It's identical stuff. So I almost like fell over in the courtroom when I heard Jodi say that she loved those children. Jodi doesn't love children. Jodi's like Ted Bundy. In fact, one time I was in a
Do you feel that she should have a longer sentence than
Jodi, here's the problem.
No, answer the question though. I want to know
the person and runs. That's like two variables, a car and someone running. They catch them. Jodi's got like 30 variables, including a huge issue with the Mormon church racketing. I mean, they're all ducking low and covering. In fact, I looked at an email, and I can show this to you guys. It's this factual evidence. Where it should have been a neutral person in the courts. Kelly Peterson, the guardian ad litem, when they were punishing me in the family custody courts, he said that my act to turn Jodi Hildebrandt in was an act of vengeance, and they took my kids away from me. Because I performed an act of vengeance.
Okay.
That's in this court was sitting there.
That's a lot of context to where there is so much emotion coming up because him trying, it sounds to me from his statement that him trying to whistleblow on Ruby Franke was used against him as a weapon in the family law court and he lost his kids. I understand now where all of this is coming from because this is a lot of trauma that he's been through because of this woman who he saw sentenced to prison today. And I don't think was planning to talk, but took the mic and now we're here.
Completely in bed with Jodi. They've done it. I talked to Doug Thayer's daughter. She saw relations. I mean, these aggressive attorneys working with Jodi, Commissioner Patton. All these people know about Jodi. The BYU Honor Code office before they kicked me out of school for being a whistleblower on child abuse, I guess. Jodi Hildebrandt went there and told...
They kicked him out of BYU for calling this out? That goes back years then.
I was the most dangerous man she'd ever met in her lifetime. We have hundreds of pages of this stuff of Jodi Hildebrandt working with top church leaders to dispel me. I got kicked out of school my senior year. This lady
has been ruining his life since he was a senior in college.
Of how she talks, how she walks. Now, here's what I do want to say. I don't like Ruby Franke, but I don't know her. I just think you have to be a selfish person to fall for Jodi's stuff. She's got a certain kind of carrot that gets certain kind of people. But Ruby Franke would have never done any of this stuff if Jodi Hildebrandt hadn't been the mastermind and just completely created this. Ruby Franke's...
He's got a lot going on. But we have seen that the parenting techniques that Ruby was using predate Jodi.
Not dangerous in the sense she's not going to go out and do this to more kids, but Jodi Hildebrandt will. When we put her,
which makes Jodi more dangerous, and that's what the prosecution said.
Doppel ordered her to go through all this ethical stuff. She went through the whole thing with shining colors, and she turned around and did the same stuff again. I mean, even when she was teaching us that we were safe to come to her and stuff, she was abusing children at the same time with one hand and teaching a godliness with another hand.
So what's her motivation?
Jodi Hildebrandt had a...
the reporter asked, what's her motivation? So this will all be speculation about what her motivation is. I think money's definitely part of it.
Weird relationship with my ex-wife. It was a dual relationship. It was bordering sexual in nature. I mean, she went through different women that made her look powerful and important. My ex-wife's dad was an Area 70 in the Mormon church. And Jodi Hildebrandt wanted power, but I know her instincts. When you're in a pain and suffering, when you talk about something and she finds a way to hurt you, it makes her blush. It makes her feel euphoric. I've seen her act that way and look that way in the worst of circumstances. So I always compare Jodi Hildebrandt to Ted Bundy because nobody can figure out why a serial killer would kill people. Jodi Hildebrandt, she grows off of people's pain and destruction. And when she sat there and said she loved those kids, I almost fell out of my chair. The only thing her version of loving children is find a way to make them hurt more than anything possible. It's like an energy she feeds off of.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah.
He definitely had a lot to say.
It's a little traumatic for me, so if I monologue, I'm sorry. Does anybody have a question?
We can tell that it's traumatic for you, sir.
Covered a lot. Covered a lot.
We got a ton of documentation.
The news media is now like, well, I don't know how much of this is going to be left up, but this is his opinion and his experience. He's clearly been through a lot for decades with Jodi Hildebrandt in a way that is different than what others have been through.
That 4th District Court's got to be ducking their heads right now because I do want to say something.
He's in the middle.
There's countless children out there
of a
that have been raised
story about
to
his
believe
court
their fathers
experience.
are predators because of Jodi Hildebrandt. And the 4th District Court and other courts involved don't want to show they made mistakes. So who's going to help those children? Like, who's going to help them? Like, this is a court of public opinion. People need to find out the truth to go help all these children and help all these people come forward. And the fact that the court tried to silence me for being on the front edge of coming forward is just an example of how the same notorious people in power back then that allowed Jodi to do all this stuff are alive and thriving today. And if you give a damn about our children, you got to do the same thing I do and fight for what's true.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you, Adam. That was Adam Steed. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I was getting it through my IFB hearing myself. That was Adam Steed, who claims to have been a victim of Jodi Hildebrandt, in a sense, comparing her to Ted Bundy. So really, really emotional testimony that we're hearing outside of the courthouse now.
She's going back to her producer. Let's see if there's anybody else in front of the courthouse that has anything else to say. That was quite a lot of information. I am not familiar with Adam's story, but he's clearly been through a lot and had a lot to say. And it looks like that is the end of the press conference. But it seems that for somebody who's had interactions with Jodi Hildebrandt, that was a moment of clarity. All right. And then they're going to replay the sentencing. So let us swoop, let us talk about where we're at, and let us get to questions, because that's what you guys have. And we are going to get to questions. Julia asked, is court still live? No, the sentencings are done. We are done. Court is not still live. This case is done, but for the restitution, and then the prison board will determine the sentencing. So we will real quickly do a quick summary and then get to Q&A. So let's do that now. Let me swoop. I'm going to pull this over so that you're now hearing my production thoughts behind the scenes as we do this on a live court day, because today was a live court day. So let's do a quick recap for all of you that have just joined the chat. Go ahead and do the YouTubey things. A, it helps people find us. B, it's always fun to be at the top of live trending. And C, I'm trying to prove to my children that I'm actually a real YouTuber. So, you know, all the things. Let's chat. Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke were in court today. Both were sentenced to 4 consecutive sentences of 4 to 15 years. So essentially, they were sentenced to 4 years to 30 years It will be determined in Utah, because Utah does indeterminate sentencing. It will be determined in Utah how long they will get by the Prison and Parole Board. That is the role of the Prison and Parole Board. Indeterminate sentencing is not something that we've come across in any of the jurisdictions that I regularly cover. It is not super common in my experience, but it is what they do in Utah. So 30 years max. Why? Because these are second-degree felonies for both women. So what is left outstanding in this case? What is left outstanding is restitution. That's going to stay open for 8 months, so that can be determined. We will see if a redacted version of the pre-sentencing report gets submitted to the public docket. If so, I will go over that in podcast form. Depending on how much detail it goes in, I always redact some of those details out. It is clear from the press conferences that there is a lot of anger and frustration for what Jodi Hildebrandt has done to those in her community, and that she has had multiple families, or it's alleged that multiple families have been pulled apart in the way that the Franke family has experienced. And it was said in the last press conference by Adam Sneed, who had interactions with Jodi Hildebrandt, seemed to have been a victim of Jodi Hildebrandt, that what Jodi Hildebrandt did was separate the women from their husbands, the women and the children, and then perpetrate this same type of abuse on them, saying that it was discipline or parenting. It's really, really difficult stuff. The prosecution said in their press conference that this was the worst abuse that they have seen as a prosecutor's office, and that is where that is. I'm going to get to your Q&A now that we've kind of wrapped the day. We're going to keep an eye on the restitution, the sale of Jodi Hildebrandt's house, but these women are both going to go to prison sometime down the road. It's going to be a while. We will see if we learn how long they will be sentenced for. So let's go to some of your questions, and then I'm going to wrap for the day. And we're going to be back with trial later this week. If you don't have the Lawnerd app, go ahead, lawnerd.com, and grab the Lawnerd app. We are going to be covering on the channel the Rust trial that is starting once it's done with jury selection, which should be Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday. So we will see. I will keep you posted when I'm going to go live, but we are covering that trial today. That's what we're doing. So lawnerd.com. Let's get to your questions. There's lots of them that I've been grabbing as I've been streaming. Quick bits. Lots of questions. So that was not the right bumper. Damn it, Emily. When I run my own production, this is what happens. Bigalina can't fix it. We're professionals here. All right. I see all of your members' chats. Thank you. I do go through and read them and get to the questions we can, and I will be getting to the questions. Is this a new haircut? No, but I've been sick and wearing a hat for like 3 weeks. So it's just, sometimes we heat style and this is what happens. Good to see you. I know a lot of people have been sick. I am still recovering from being sick. Heather, it's my 43rd birthday. Thank you for letting me be part of this community. No, thank you, Heather. I'm not gatekeeping the community. Thank you for being a part of the community, and we appreciate having you here. This is an incredible community, so thank you. Alex, hearings at 12 p.m. Mountain Time via Zoom before the trial. I don't think there's much going on with Alec. I think he was entering a plea. If we need to cover it, I'll cover it one of the days before court. When we get into the Rust trial, I don't think there's much going on with Baldwin other than date settings. This case is wild. My daughter went to high school with Ruby, so it hits close. Karen, I'm sure it does hit close to home. This is a really horrific case, and it is pretty wide ranging. And and especially with Jodi being on the internet. Where was this question? Shelby in the chat asked, can the kids get restitution from the sale of the house, or would that go to her husband? I don't know if Jodi Hildebrandt is married. I haven't looked into that at all. But there is a stay in place in the court that I covered a number of weeks back, so that the sale of the house can go towards restitution depending on how much restitution is ordered. Derv said, will they both be in the same prison? Not necessarily, but they're no longer co-defendants, so it's possible, but not necessarily will they be in the same prison. It just depends. There tend to be fewer women's prisons than men's prisons, so if they both end up staying in the state of Utah, it is possible, but the prison system will decide where they both get the help that they need. I imagine because they were co-defendants, even if they are in the same prison building, they will not be housed in the same unit where they have access to one another, where they can have conversations with one another. I imagine they will be kept quite a ways away from each other, because I think that's really what's appropriate, and I imagine what is considered safe. Ran, one of those two, I apologize for whatever is the mispronunciation, said, just got a judicial internship at the Michigan Superior or Supreme Court. Congratulations. It's illuminating working with judges. Have the most fun. Courthouses are great. Donna Lee said, almost my 50th birthday. I wish it wasn't so. Donna, we just get better with age. We're like a good whiskey or wine. Just age us, feed us, we're fine. Kara asked a question that a lot of you asked in the chat. Why wasn't this an attempted murder case? We're going to have a difficult conversation that a lot of that we don't always like. It's pronounced Lily Rain. Okay. I think it's pronounced Lily Rain. Thank you in the chat. This is a hard conversation, but this is how the law is going to look at it. So we're going to take the feelings aside, and we're going to talk about the facts in the law. When you have defendants that are presenting saying that this was discipline, the mens rea or the intent to kill the children is not there. Could it have been, had that happened, this would have been in the realm of one of the manslaughter cases, because it's not that that's what they were choosing to do. They were not trying to kill someone. They were disciplining someone. I'm going to put that in quotes because it's abuse. It's not discipline. But their thought process would have been that it is discipline. And therefore what they were trying to do was harm the kids, but the intent was not to kill the kids. So this is going to break down on intent, and no intent to murder, but to harm. And you don't really get into attempt manslaughter. These were aggravated child abuse cases. I think that's the appropriate charge for aggravated child abuse, because you're dealing with really difficult factual issues of intent, and the aggravated child abuse, given that these are their first criminal offenses, is going to get them into prison time in the same way that is appropriate and is going to accurately account for the actions and any defenses they may have. I rather have the prosecution have them plea on the case that is going to be most accurately aligned with the facts than have to argue to a jury that these women were intending to murder the kids when the intent was this more diluted sense of quote unquote discipline. I know that doesn't always feel right, because the actions could have resulted in death. Had the actions resulted in death, you would have ended up in those kind of manslaughter realms, because it doesn't seem that that was the intent. So when you get into things like involuntary manslaughter, there's no attempted involuntary manslaughter. Those have to go into other realms of law and other cases. I think the charges are most aligned with the behavior that they had. And so sometimes stretching and over prosecuting charges ends up with a very negative result. So that is my perspective as a former prosecutor on why this wouldn't have been charged as an attempted murder. Carol asked, do they get time served? They get credit for the amount of time they've been in custody since the arrest. Yes, they will get credit towards that. Sent a link. Alec is back in court today. We will check in with that later this week. It's good to see everybody saying hello. I'm not going to pull all of those up today. Does Ruby still have parental rights? At the moment, it's my understanding, yes. However, those family law court proceedings are still ongoing. I am going to try to grab another comment that I just saw. So it's those family law proceedings are still ongoing. She isn't going to, I mean, there's nothing in place now that would prevent her from having communications from prison with her children, though those might be put into place in a final order when they finish with the family law stuff. Now that the criminal law stuff is mostly done, except for restitution, the family law stuff can move forward. She might lose some of the legal parental rights while she's in custody. She may not. We will see. But that is going to be taking place in the family law court, and that will be private. That will not be public proceedings. Simply Cheryl, thank you for the kind comment. I wish everyone watched you because a lot of people have questions about why she got a range. Because Utah. Will the board decision be announced? They generally aren't made public, but we can take a look. NJ Kathy said, this is unbelievable. She has no accountability for her behavior. It's just BS that her attorneys are spewing. That's what attorneys do. They advocate for their client. I'm sorry, Jan. Sure, Jan, it's just such a great way to call BS. It's such a good meme. Jan, we love you. You don't need to change your name. Rachel said, I'm seething with rage as a mother. I understand. I understand. Bryce Jones said her statements about church leaders is a huge deal in the Mormon church. I think you're talking about Ruby's thank you to the church leaders. I think a lot of Ruby's statements were self-serving to try to save face for when she gets out of prison. Morgan said, why did the prosecutor not mention the two older victims? There aren't any other victims in the criminal case. The older children are not victims in the criminal case. So in the criminal case, it is just the two charged victims in that case. That doesn't mean they are not victims of their mother. It means that they are not charged victims in this case. And then no charges have been brought based on any action that has happened towards or against those children in the past by Ruby Franke. So that is why that was not mentioned. Chris M said, hi, have you heard about the court case in Florida involved? I have no idea. I have no idea. Thanks for always making the hard things easier. I try to. That is the goal. Octo is asking you to subscribe to the app. At least one download for each tentacle from Octo. So thank you, Octo. Good to see you in the chat, friend. Let's see. Emily, your hair. Well, thank you. We blew dry the hair today because we had a little bit more time and I'm not as sick as I was. Bobby Cat said, please tell your children only real YouTubers get 22,000 in a live chat. I know you've had more than that in the past. Let's get to 1 million subs. Thank you, Bobby Cat. I think my 12-year-old is constantly going to keep me humble. That is their goal. My goal is to embarrass them on occasion and make them laugh. And their goal is to keep me grounded in the world that we live in. Tamar said, just got the news. My dad's heart surgery was successful. What great news on a difficult day in court. Spicy Cat Foster said that escalated quickly. Love to all the victims in the chat. Crazy Cat Queen said, question, if Adam has docs, can they charge Jodi for more cases or no, because it was the 4th district? So with past behavior, there is always issues of statutes of limitation. I do not have enough information to give very helpful commentary on that. Statute of limitations are a real thing. Where actions happened is a consideration. How old the victims were when things happened is a consideration. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw civil lawsuits now that we know that Jodi's house is on the market for over $5 million from past victims. But how long ago things happened is a very real concern. Not all victims want to go through the court process. Not all victims want to have this system played out. So it really depends how long ago things happened, whether it's documented or not. Statute of limitations is a real concern. Lori said other victims of Jodi have come forward. I think that's why she could not say she was remorseful due to culpability. Other charges may come. Again, it depends. I think she could have said she was remorseful in this case. This case is done and it's not going to change other cases. She could have said more. She chose not to because it's very specific to these victims in this case. I don't know if she feels that way. And I think not lying in court is a good thing. So we will see what happens from here with Jodi. Let's see. Adam sounds scattered. Please give him grace. I think there was absolutely a lot of emotion going on, and I hope that the chat gave grace. I think that I gave grace. I hope that I did, but there was a lot happening for him very clearly after being in court here. Thank you so much, Conical Heart. There are definitely animations on YouTube, which are really fun. I love that. Let's see. RK said, Emily, Adam, and his family are at the heart of the Boy Scout abuse whistleblowing. That was a huge case. I covered it ages ago. It ended up in Chapter 11 bankruptcy because there were so many cases against Boy Scouts of America. So it sounds like he has an episode on the Mormon Stories podcast, so you guys can find more of his story there. Ruby still made a choice to do this. Absolutely. Matt Bond, good to see you. Hello, my spiffy legal mumbo jumbo talkie sister from another mister. Adam feels like he cannot lose anymore. He finally feels the light is on everything he said. I think there's a lot, depending on how long somebody's been dealing with something, it can, I imagine, feel very liberating that everybody now sees what you're saying. It's like, do you see it now? I imagine that is very, very liberating. Let's see. I feel for him, but if he has been ordered to stop talking by the court, can he get in legal trouble for this? I would need to look at the orders. Always a possibility, depending on what the court, if you violate a court order, you can get in trouble. I don't know what the court order is, so I can't shed much light. Shiraz, thank you for the gifted memberships. That's incredibly kind. I know a lot of you guys have thoughts about the church, about BYU, about Utah. You guys are all entitled to your opinion. I'm not going to pull all of those up because I get it. JP said, Emily, background, Adam and his father led the charge against the Boy Scouts and abuse. The church covered it up and tried to ruin his life. A story not dissimilar from other churches, unfortunately, when people blow the whistle on particularly sexual abuse. Adam called them all out by name. His interview with Mormon Stories got ordered off. Well, we will see what happens with this because we have his interview on the channel and I can keep you all posted and we'll see what happens. He took the mic and had a lot to say, and is clearly has long history with Jodi Hildebrandt. So we will see. It's true that he was interviewed on Mormon Stories and that the video was ordered down by somebody. It's listed under the podcast community page. I imagine if they upload audio, if the video is ordered down, there might be audio too. Cosmically Forsaken said Adam Paul Steed's interview was taken down on Mormon Stories, but Hidden True Crime has Adam's interview still up. There we go. Thank you guys for the inside. Chat is the best. Chat is bae. Chat is hydrated. Chat is wise. I saw another comment I was going to grab. Where did it go? Carrie Ann in the chat asked, will Ruby lose all her rights to her children? Not necessarily. We will see what the court does. She can lose, some of her legal rights, but it will honestly depend on what the family law court chooses to do. She is going to be in prison for close to at least 4 years at a minimum. So hopefully that will give everyone some time to heal, but we will see. I don't know what will happen with her parental rights. Can they be taken? Yes. Is that something that happens in every case of child abuse? No. So we will see. Barbara said Marquis did some videos on Adam's story. I will take a look. I've got to be honest. When I watch Marquis' videos, they're mostly regarding the 9-month cruise lately because the cases that we're covering here are so heavy, and drama on the 9-month cruise, like them running out of wine, is something I love. So it's something that I love. let's see. I saw a sidebar question. Question sidebar. Petunia Tube said, what lippy are you wearing today? I am wearing... Petunia, I'm going to have to call myself out to do this, because I can't see the small writing for the shade on this with my glasses on. This is Lawless. It is Shade Velvet. It is Lawless Forget the Filler. I like it. It doesn't get stringy. And it was the first thing I grabbed out of my drawer. I love Marquis and the Saga, the 9-month cruise. God, I love the 9-month cruise so much. I wish I was a 9-month cruise. I wish I was a 9-month cruise commentator sometimes. Why is the website for Jodi still up and allowing people to come? I can't, I mean, she obviously can't fulfill anything on the website. It might just be because there's no one left to take it down after she got arrested, because it was up prior to her arrest. I don't know who would take it down. I don't know if her lawyer would even have access to take it down. So, Cheryl said, question, why do you think the prosecutor went with the plea deals as opposed to trials? Cheryl, I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on this. This I can answer. This, we're gonna lippy more. This I can answer. With the nature of the crimes done, the age of the victims, the trauma that the victims have suffered physically and mentally, the fact that these victims were made to believe that that they did something to deserve this, that they caused this abuse, the fact that they were psychologically abused to the point where they thought that they deserved this abuse is horrific. Having to go through a trial, even a sensitive trial, is not easy for any victim. Very difficult for traumatized children victims. If I was a prosecutor, I would absolutely want a plea deal in this case. And the plea deal they got was a good one. 4 consecutive counts of prison time on a first offense, and the children don't have to come into court and confront their abusers, don't have to testify against their mother, and can start to heal. Absolutely a reason to take a plea deal and not take this case to trial. That said, there are abusers of children and others that refuse to take plea deals so they can confront the people that they have abused, so they can stare down their victims in court. There are abusers that will represent themselves, so they're the ones that can cross-examine their victims. There are lots of things that can happen in the court system that feel absolutely awful. So for these defendants to take a plea was a plea for prison and for consecutive prison terms was absolutely the best outcome for this case. If this case had to happen, ideally children wouldn't be harmed, right? Ideally people wouldn't harm one another and they would be able to like process their emotions and not hurt other people. But given what happened, this is, I think, the best outcome for the victims in this case. For those of you calling out Darrell Brooks, yeah, Darrell Brooks exactly did that. I think a huge reason that he wanted to represent himself was so that he could go after his ex-girlfriend and the mother of his children to question her on the stand. That seemed to be the point of it, and that is not uncommon at all, and it's horrific. Melissa F in the chat echoed that, saying my ex-DV abuser represented himself so that he could cross-examine me. Yeah. It's really awful to watch abusers continue to perpetrate that abuse in court. It is, and there's not much the court system can do to prevent it if people choose to represent themselves. It's tough. Robin said today's my birthday. Happy birthday, Robin. As we switched gears just a little bit. I forgot that Ted Bundy did that. Ted Bundy in Florida did that too. I had forgotten. But Darrell Brooks was a thing. Question: if there is court proceedings from the cruise, will you cover it? Yes. Depending on what it is, but yes. Yes. Runkle said something in the chat that I wish, well, our Constitution prevents, but Runkle said in Canada, a self-represented person will be assigned a lawyer for cross-examination in those kinds of cases. Our Constitution prevents it, but it would be the more humane result, truly. It allows abuse to continue to be perpetrated. What I will say is that with the victims that I have had personal dealings with us in pro per representation cases, being able to stand up to the person who did that can give some closure, and juries see through it 100%. Juries see through it 100%. When a defendant sits there and stares down victims, juries see through it. Juries see through it. They end up convicting themselves because the juries see their behavior in court. And it doesn't make it easier, but sometimes victims can feel like they got to finally stand their ground. Question, do you think Jodi and Ruby will only do 4 years of the max is 30, so 4 to 30. I think Jodi will probably get more time than Ruby based on the prosecutor's statements. I imagine those statements are echoed in the pre-sentencing report. I think both of them should get a bit more than 4, but if the prosecutor's saying that he thinks 4 is appropriate for Ruby, I'm sure he said that in the pre-sentencing report, and Ruby might only get 4, which won't be a full 4 because there is some accommodation for like a good time, work time percentage, and then the amount of time she's been in custody since she was arrested last summer. So there's that. Question, what do you think of a defendant who refuses to show up for their trial? I mean, they can be tried in absentia. I don't think it's a good idea to not show up for your own trial, but people have done it to try to delay their trial, and it definitely doesn't work. You can be tried. If you refuse to come, you can be tried anyway. Adam's now ex-wife was brainwashed by Jodi. Together, they destroyed his life. His interview with Mormon Stories was incredible, and his ex-wife got legal injunction to force it to be removed. We've gotten a lot more information in the chat. There's clearly more to the story than I know with all of this, because I've covered just what's going on with Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. I have not gone into, and I normally don't with cases, go into what is outside of the case that I am covering generally, because I'm covering so many cases. So thank you everybody for all of your input on that. A lot of you have input on that, so I'm gonna thank you. I see them all. They are here. So thank you. And the chat knows where to find people. The lawyer shook his head no, as he said many times. Yes, the lawyer absolutely shook his head no. I think we all caught the lawyer saying she expressed remorse many times. I think everybody saw that, because it was interesting when you look at the lawyer right before that, he was saying yes this, and then the no. It was very interesting. Would you do a segment for the 9-month cruise for EDB International Maritime Law Edition? Maybe. I had a really interesting cruise ship case when I was a law clerk for 2 judges when I was a research attorney. And maybe we will just talk. Maybe we'll do it in members only. Maybe we'll talk 9-month cruise in members only. Just as well prison was her preference. Isn't it though, just as well that prison is Ruby Franke's preference? Oh, y'all, we've got just a few more questions and then I need to get going. Even though I'm recovering from being sick, my neck is still giving me a very difficult time. Rosie said, get interview with Mr. Beast about YouTube, # real YouTuber. He talks so much about analytics. My conversation, and I've met Jimmy in person briefly. I've talked to his team. I like a lot of members of his team. I really quite like Carl Jacobs. My conversation with Jimmy about things like analytics are like, oh, what's your analytics on that? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't look at it. I can tell you who my community is. I can tell you how much I love it when, B2 gifts memberships and Matt Bond comes in and says hi, and RK is on our Zoom calls telling us all of the things and sharing what's going on. in their life and how much I love this community. But I can't tell you my analytics on this or that, because it's not what I pay attention to. So it would be a difficult conversation. In my opinion, Ruby should serve time until the youngest is 18. I don't know if we're going to see that, because that would be 10 years, but it's possible. It's in the range. It's absolutely possible. But if the prosecutor is saying that they think 4 years is good, I think we're probably there. Michelle suggested magnesium spray. I have some. I have magnesium spray and CBD spray I've been using, but I've got a monster knot that's just... Spicy Foot earlier said they divorced since when? Kevin Franke filed for divorce a while back. I covered that briefly on the channel, but Kevin Franke filed for divorce a while ago, and that's ongoing. I think it's probably part of what he wants to do so he can get custody of his children, but that's not been decided yet. I'm not going to even try to break this up. Nuda said, how many times was the family reported to CPS? Numerous. Why did CPS ignore, not investigate? We don't have those reports to know. As a former CPS worker, you go back until you find them. I don't know what happened there. What I will say is, when a family member is reporting, because I know one of the older children did report, it concerns me that that wasn't looked into more. Of course, raises a lot of questions for me. When it's people that watch a video on the internet and then they call, I imagine CPS, like law enforcement, oftentimes will kind of put that to the side, because it's hard to parse what is true and what is not true when it comes from an observing audience. It concerns me deeply that the older child had called CPS and tried to get help and was ignored. That concerns me deeply. So that is my thought on that. Let's see. Kiara said both. So she only got 4 years. Just wanted to make sure that I am clear one more time. They have an indeterminate sentence between 4 and 30 years. It will be determined later what it is. I got myself an electronic stim from my neck. I have a TENS unit. I have been using it for about a week, and the knot is not gone, but I'm getting it worked on a little bit more today. So it is what it is. I've had a spinal fusion. I have some spine things that happen, so I'm not surprised. You do share all the things that I love it. It makes me so happy when we get to chat. Rampage, how much time did they get? From 4 to 30 years. So we will see how much time they actually get down the road when the Bureau of Prisons determines it. Who will control if the kids can speak with the parole board, dad or the guardian ad litem? If the kids did not already, the guardian ad litem will be facilitating that, or should be facilitating that, not the father, because the father does not have custody of the kids at the moment. Margaret said, so why have this sentencing? The legal sentencing has to happen, and this is the process in Utah. So they have been sentenced to 4 to 30 years, and the parole board will determine down the road how much time it is. Melly said, when is sentencing? It was today. So that was today. And they got sentenced, and then it will be determined. We knew that Utah was indeterminate sentencing. It's always odd to see, but here we are. Infamous truth teller said Ruby's statement felt insecure with absolutely no emotion for her children. She only got whiny when she was apologizing to her dear friends. She didn't apologize to her children, so I think she should get 30 years. It was very interesting seeing Ruby Franke say that there was an undercurrent that led her astray and not. She said, thank you for this opportunity to take accountability, but then when she was talking about her children, she very much distanced herself from this behavior, talked about herself as a mama duck that was pulled away by an undercurrent, that it wasn't her. I will say that two things can be true at once, and this conversation can be more nuanced than that. And there probably is room for more nuance in the conversation with regard to what Jodi Hildebrandt was doing, how that psychologically impacted Ruby Franke. And all of the circumstances here, especially when we see that Ruby Franke is not the only woman, according to the statements in the press conference, who has had this experience with Jodi Hildebrandt, and that there is more there. So is there room for a more nuanced conversation? Yes. Am I the best person to have a conversation about the coercive control Jodi Hildebrandt might have had over Ruby Franke and the psychological impact of that? Probably not. Why? Because I am not a psychiatrist, and also I am a former prosecutor. So right now I am still in my anger over the crime that was done, and go to prison. Like, that's where I'm at today, with just like, go to prison, go to prison, go to prison, go to prison. Is there room for that conversation to be had by someone? Probably. Can people be coerced into behavior that is not necessarily behavior that an action that they would take? Yes, we can see that. Is that a difficult thing for me to parse when you are the parent? Yes, it is difficult for me to parse. So I am sure we will see people who have degrees in all of the things discussing this that are not me. I am a lawyer. My background is in criminal law, and the result is go to prison. So that's where I'm at today. But do I think that it's going, if Ruby Franke genuinely wants to process what she did to her children, that's going to take time? That's absolutely going to take a lot of time for Ruby to process what she physically did to her children and what she allowed to be done to her children. She is absolutely going to have to take a substantial amount of time to do that. And I hope that she does. I hope that she does. I hope that she gets the therapy and actually genuinely does the work where she stops distancing and actually deals with what she did, because there are actions there that she took. So for those of you talking about the TENS unit, yesterday I was sitting at my desk like this. So I've been doing it. I thought Lawyer Cat was going to make an appearance. I mean, we need Lawyer Cat for sure. Go to prison for all the years. That's kind of where I'm at. It's a difficult situation, because it's hard to imagine a parent who can end up being like, yeah, this seems like the thing that we're going to do. It's also hard for me to say, look, Ruby can blame everything on Jodi Hildebrandt, when we know, especially from things like Swoop did a great documentary on this. And I think it's done multiple videos on this. Other content creators have done great videos on this, looking at the behavior that Ruby Franke was exhibiting before she ever met or was working with Jodi Hildebrandt. So there's time and history there that she was already inclined to take her kids' beds away, to not feed her kids when they weren't behaving. There's already evidence and history of that. So it's hard for me to say all of this just is to blame on Jodi Hildebrandt. I can't really process that in that way. Infamous Truth Teller said, very much for answering and commenting on my comment. I was just in my feelings about the 30 years. I understand. It's okay. It's okay to have feelings. I think it is a very natural and human response to look at the behavior that was done to these children, look at the things that was done to these children, and the response to be prison forever. I'll parse it out later, but for today, the feelings are prison forever. I completely understand that feeling, and the feeling of protectiveness, and the feeling of, you know what, Jodi, Ruby, I don't give a shit about what your excuses are. I don't care what you thought you were supposed to be doing. We see the actions done to your kids. There's not a lot of room for nuance there. Go to prison. Absolutely understand those feelings. And there's room for those conversations later. I am not the one to parse out that type of coercive control and brainwashing, and if that is what happened here or not happened here. Can those things happen? Yes, they can. Am I in a place today to parse that? You harmed your children. That's where I'm at today. And Whistling Dixie said a child literally had to escape this woman. So imagine the terror from the physical abuse, mental, where these kids don't know if they would eat, be tied up, kidnapped like prisoners of war, no excuse. And that's why it's hard to have the nuanced conversation about this. I think what we will see is the prosecutor in this case continuing to advocate, hopefully, that multi-victim child abuse cases are not second degrees. They don't have that 30-year cap. I could see where that 30-year cap on second-degree felonies with multiple victims could work in really awful ways and allow people who are abusing lots of children to only face 30 years. I don't like that at all. But I come from a jurisdiction where multi-victim enhancements existed. And I thought, you know, when there are multiple victims, that there should be accountability for all of that. So at the end of the day, I hope that these children heal. And I hope that the time out of society to rehabilitate prevents Ruby from doing this in the future. What Adam said in his interview was very interesting to me when he said, you know, when Ruby gets out, she's not going to do this to anyone else. But Jodi is the one who was recruiting other women to do this to family after family after family. And the prosecutor seemed to echo that. And that was very telling, and a very telling statement that the amount of people harmed by Jodi Hildebrandt is substantially more at the end of the day than the amount of people harmed by Ruby Franke, even though the harm of both is horrendous. So we will see. I'm not going to give you guys a case closed bumper yet because I want to see what the restitution is, unless you really want a case closed bumper. I mean, they're going to prison. So that's kind of the end. So you guys let me know in the chat real quick if you want the case closed bumper, yes or no. And we'll do a pickle cleanse real quick, and maybe we'll do a case closed, and then we'll take a deep breath. The twerking llama is sadly not up at the desk, but we will.
Look, at the end of the day, I dropped my fucking pickle. At the end of the day, Jodi Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke are going to prison. That is the proper result. They should go to prison. And I hope that these children are able to hear. We're going to do a cleanse. Just take a breath, everybody. All right.
A lot of you said no to the case closed bumper. We will, I will keep an eye on the restitution. I will keep an eye on whether or not we get the pre-sentencing reports. I will keep an eye. It might be a year or more from now when we find out what the actual determinative range is. That's not going to be a quick answer. We will circle back. We're going to put a pin in it for now. And we're going to circle back on all of that. And I think we'll probably see some FOIA requests for those jail calls from Jodi Hildebrandt. So I don't think we're all the way done yet. Okay, law nerds, I will see you soon. Tomorrow, is today Tuesday? What day is it? Today's Tuesday. Yesterday was a holiday. I'm so confused. Today is Tuesday. Tomorrow there is a new podcast episode. New podcast episode is going to cover kind of the background you need to know for the trial of Hannah Gutierrez. Hannah Gutierrez goes to trial on Wednesday with jury selection. I think on Thursday we're going to start gavel to gavel live court coverage of the Hannah Gutierrez Reed trial. We've got some interesting witnesses on the witness list. We've had some very interesting pretrial motions. So we've got trial this week. Y'all get ready to be in trial. Download the Law Nerd app so you are not late to court like I often was. And we'll make sure that you guys stay in the chat. I saw one really good question that I'm going to answer real quick because I think this is a good question that I haven't addressed yet. Bookworm 6. Excellent question. Thank you for asking it. Why no victim impact statement? If the victims wanted to make a statement or chose to make a statement, they could, the guardian ad litem could with them in the pre-sentencing report. It didn't need to be done in court. I think it's probably appropriate that it wasn't done in court, given the circumstances of the case. The parole and sentencing board, the parole and prison board will have that information. So they didn't do it in court. If those documents become public, we will have a conversation about them. Thank you for the great question, you guys. It's a court week, so I got to get this neck working so we can be in court together. Thursday, I think, is what we're going to be doing for Hannah Gutierrez Reed, unless jury selection goes over. So I will keep you in the loop. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being Law Nerd. Get the app. Bye. You can stay up to date with everything I'm covering and fast notifications on our free iOS and Android app at lawnerdapp.com or search the App Store for Law Nerd. You can also follow me around social media, and don't forget to check out my podcast, The Emily Show, with quick bits dropping every Monday, summarizing everything I do here on the live streams on Tuesday and Thursday for when you just have time for the quick bits. Thanks for being a Law Nerd.